What dark secret are you hiding from everyone? I kinda hope this never sees the light of day after I post it, but I want to get it off my chest. I'm in love with my best friend's wife, and I have been for years. She's funny, smart, creative, and so vibrant, and sometimes there's a bit of envy and bitterness involved, as it just seems a bit wasted on him sometimes. He's a great guy and all, yeah, but he definitely doesn't seem to care much about her hobbies or passions and doesn't share her sense of humor, which is such a loss on his part. Anyway, I know he loves her, but it just seems that he takes her granted for a lot. When I spend time with him, I'm always a bit afraid it's gonna tell somehow. I always feel compelled to downplay and sometimes avoid interacting with her too much. We click pretty well though, so it's not always easy. I doubt she'd be interested romantically, even if we were both unattached, and I'd never cross that line regardless. Even if they were to split up someday, I'd still feel like a scumbag for trying to form a relationship with my best friend's ex. What makes it worse is that I've been in a relationship with her best friend for the past, 3 years. I love the person I'm with, and the only other person I'd ever want to be with more is permanently unavailable. Still makes me feel like shit though. I wish I didn't feel this way about her, and the guilt definitely gets a bit overwhelming at times. But I haven't figured out the trick to just switching that sort of thing off yet. Thank you for creating this so I can get this off my chest. During an argument with my mum when I was about 14 years old, she yelled at me, and instead of saying something normal like, "Fuck you," she instead yelled, "Your dad molested you when you were 4 years old." My dad is an alcoholic, since before I was even born, but it got worse throughout the years, so even though he was around sort of, he also wasn't. It's hard to explain, but even if he was home, he passed out on the recliner with SPN on him, and alcohol next to him. That's my earliest memories of him. So, my mom saying this was believable, coupled with the fact that I've never truly felt comfortable and safe around him. But I didn't think that could be why. I will admit, though, that throughout my adolescence, I would hate going swimming if he was going to be there or wearing shorts around him because it just felt like he was looking. I don't know if that meant anything or if it was just in my head, but I struggled with that for years because of his lack of presence and support as a father, forcing my mom to do it all. I resented him, so I figured that I could explain my paranoia around him, the lack of trust. But when my mom told me that he abused me, and I didn't know about it because they kept it from me, I actually tried to kill myself that night with a shit ton of aspirin, because I genuinely wanted to die. 1, I was disgusted that I was allowed to visit my father and be around him for all those years if that was actually true. And 2, I didn't see the point in living anymore if my mother could be so cruel to me and hurt me so deeply like that. Literally, all I just wanted was her love, but it just seemed like she hated me. She wasn't always that bad, though. Pretty sure her change in behavior toward me happened around 12 to 13, but it really took a turn for the worst at 14. Those teen years were the worst years of my life. She tortured me with cruel words often. Anyway, I went into my room after her comment, said nothing, and I left my door open when I swallowed 100+ pills of aspirin, because I secretly wanted her to know what I've done. She did walk by and saw it eventually, freaked out and tried to make me vomit, but I couldn't. I always had a hard time vomiting, even naturally, but she wouldn't let me go to the hospital because she said I would end up locked up for about 2 weeks. After all, I was a threat to myself. I didn't care at that point because I was just frozen, sort of. I just remember genuinely wanting to die and not caring at all. Almost feeling relieved that I might actually go to sleep and not wake up. So she forces me to walk around the neighborhood to keep me awake. Eventually, during this walk, everything goes black and I actually had an out-of-body experience. I never had anything like that happen to me since. I saw myself and her walking from above, same clothes, etc. from slightly above the streetlights. Then everything goes black again, and my next memory is walking past my best friend's house, which was a completely different location from my last memory. It was a trip, to say the least. I was exhausted at that point, and I don't remember much after going back. I just know that I went home and wanted to sleep so badly, but she wouldn't let me because she was scared I wouldn't wake up. Eventually, I did go to sleep, and when I woke up, I was in the worst pain I'd ever been in at that time. Immediately crying and vomiting uncontrollably. My stomach was in the worst pain. I didn't leave the house for 3 days and just recovered, basically. When I was able to get up, I called my dad's sister and asked if what my mom said was true. My aunt usually knows about everything. She let out a really deep sigh and told me that it was true, and that there was an investigation, but they had concluded there was no evidence, so no charges, no case. I asked her if she thought it was true, and she said that she didn't think so. Did I ask why the investigation? She said that my grandma on my mum's side saw something and called the police, but I guess everyone acted like my grandma was crazy and just didn't like my dad, but didn't actually see anything, and just wanted him out of the house. But I just don't think my grandma would have lied about that. Maybe I'll never know, though. I'll never actually know the truth. I only know how it made me feel. I still saw my dad after that. It was a hard place to be in, sure, and I didn't actually know, so how could I stop seeing my dad? It was the worst. It was so confusing. I still struggle with it today. I still see him sometimes, but I do still feel uncomfortable, and will never fully trust him and give him quick hugs, and I fucking hate walking away from him. I just try to cover my butt. I try to wear certain clothes if I know I'm going to visit my brother. It's weird, I know. I just don't know how to go about it. But I have definitely not kept a strong relationship with him, and I keep it short, just in case it's true. I mean, would I feel so uncomfortable like that, and even years later? I ended up having a nightmare of him molesting me years later as an adult. I wasn't sure if it was a flashback or what. It could have been a nightmare, but I don't know. Anyway, that's my dark secret. I find it particularly dark because I'm still in contact with all these people. I used to try to never talk to my family again, but I just couldn't. I wish I was stronger and colder. Also, I had some strange stomach issues on and off for years after all that aspirin, but nothing major, it seems. I'm glad I just wasn't successful. I was severely emotionally and physically bullied as a kid, and my parents never allowed me to express myself or stand up for myself out of fear that I might negatively impact their social lives. I was super skinny, geeky, greasy-haired, pimple-infested, but my folks, this is the rural South, were bound and determined that I would be the all-American, God-fearing class favorite. I went to college far away from my small town and cut off everyone but one friend from high school. I completely revamped my personality and appearance by going to the gym, changing my style. I went from Screech to Hank Moody from Californication, and ditching my southern accent. I also reinvented myself with a fraudulent backstory in childhood. People wanted to be my friend, girls wanted to have sex with me. It was a euphoric escape from my pain and my trauma, and I've kept up those lies in my adult life. Fast forward, I'm in my 30s, and 2 years ago I had a falling out with my previously mentioned friend from high school before the persona. The guy ended up growing into a bigoted, racist piece of shit, so he's not missed, but it did trigger some serious self-reflection. There was nobody in my life who knew the real me anymore. I didn't talk to any family at all. I realized I had been completely unable to have an emotional relationship with a woman, and had only meaningless flings and hookups because I had been terrified of someone rejecting me like I was throughout my formative years. I was, for a long time, very happy with my professional life and physical appearance and social life, Despite that, I began to become severely depressed and began feeling the weight of the lies. This led me to break down and almost initiate a suicide attempt. I have since sought therapy. Therapy has been the best decision I've ever made, and I've since forgiven myself and repaired my relationship with my parents. I called the person who I considered to be my best friend, a friend from college who never knew the real me, and broke down and told him everything. I even cried, which I haven't allowed myself to do in years. He said he was proud of me, and is honored to call me his best friend. I don't deserve his friendship, but feel very fortunate and grateful. I've started small. If I meet a stranger, I'm open and honest about myself if the conversation goes in that direction. Where I'm from, relationship status, all of that. I plan on eventually coming clean to all of my friends individually at some point. I also plan on entering the dating pool and dating with honest intent and accepting I will inevitably be rejected. I know it will be painful, and I'm terrified, but it will be worth it. I have to do this. I was happy when my father died. Long story short, my mother and my father got divorced when I was like 3 years old. So for almost my whole life I've been living with my father and grandmother. When I was 14, the grandmother died, and a couple weeks later my father got to the hospital with some heart problems. He spent almost 2 months and got fired during this period of time. After he got discharged, he started drinking every single day. Finds out that the only thing that had been stopping him from drinking alcohol was his mother. He had been drinking for 4 years non-stop. When I got to 18, he even stopped leaving apartments when I was around, and decided that using me as an alcohol delivery was a great idea. I do remember a couple of times I'd invite my friends to come over. The first thing he did was worship them and insult me. He said that I'm the reason he got divorced from my mother a couple of times. He even said I'm the reason my grandma is dead. He didn't work at all, but we had other apartments in other parts of the city we got just before my grandma died. I also found out I had an auntie. I'd never heard of her before, though, and she left us with some pretty shitty apartments. We've been living on landing money, which was barely enough, and he wouldn't do any house chores, but forced me to do them whilst he was drinking. When I graduated from my school, I really wanted to get into linguistic university, but my father said something like, "You should become a real man, not a pussy," and forced me into a technician university. Eventually, I studied there for almost a year. This June, he called me from his room. When I came there, he was screaming at me for letting him drink so much and begging me to call a doctor. I eventually did, but while I've been calling an ambulance, his whole body went limp. An ambulance came 20 minutes later just to prove he was dead. I found out that he sold some of Auntie's old apartments, so I have some money to live with. The worst part is the fact that the entire family still thinks he was a great guy. I wanted to tell my family about everything so badly, but decided it would make me look bad. Anyways, nowadays I'm lending my old apartments for some pretty good money, working, taking a gap year in uni, and now preparing for my exams at another university, and living my best years. I have been eliminating things from my diet, like dairy, significantly less, coffee, and no alcohol, and have started supplementing tons more fruit and taking all kinds of herbs so my bodies can go through a detox. The reason I'm doing this is not only to shed a few noticeable pounds, but it has also made my libido skyrocket, and with that my spirit has tasted amazing. My wife has never, ever mentioned this before, and we've been married for over 6 years and have been together for 9. She's unaware that I had intended for it to taste better, and the benefits have been included with that, like better sleep, higher libido, which she seems to like, and losing 10 pounds in 3 weeks. Not sure if this counts as a dark secret, but for someone out there that might want something different for themselves, maybe give this a go. I heavily eat fruit at every meal and stay away from eggs, dairy, red meat, and super starchy veggies like potatoes. So, fruit and chicken or fish, mainly. I follow every meal by taking some sort of zinc, peppermint, fenugreek, and some folate. I drink enough water throughout each day to make sure my pee is either light yellow or almost clear. Clear might mean just like a little bit too much. I've tried to work out or do some active activities for like 30 minutes to sweat and need a shower. I feel like this has been a big difference maker. Just work hard for 30 minutes doing something active. I danced, biked, ran, lifted weights, and even did some stretching on a steam room one day. Lastly, I've kept in mind that all I need to do is just get a little bit more sleep. Though I've been going to bed at an earlier time. My wife is the one that keeps me up usually. Hope this helps. 7 years ago, I developed a serious oxy habit. My usage spiked when the pandemic hit, and it quickly became a $1,000 a day addiction. No one in my life had the idea. I make a great living, and I have been able to absorb the financial impact. On 2 occasions, I came to, as my wife shook me by the shoulders to try and snap me out of some sort of weird trance I was in. Both times it had happened in front of my kids. I don't know if I'd consider the events ODs, as I was conscious and on my feet, and acting bizarre according to my wife. It freaked her out, but I talked my way out of both instances. A little over 2 years ago, I decided I was tired of chasing it, and I was going to quit. I was only doing it once. To this day, my family thinks I had the worst flu/food poisoning on the planet. Kicked cold turkey. I've been sober since September-October-ish of 20. I was a moody prick for a year. The insidious reality of opioid abuse is that it fucks with one's abilities to compartmentalize, and you just start lying to yourself about the level at which you're now physically and emotionally dependent. Well, at least I did. The line you cross to get to that point is blurry and a mile wide. I don't know when it happened, but there were a few moments when my subconscious fired one clean through and I realized, yeah, this in particular is a bad idea. Insert applicable cliche of, I know I did the right thing category here, but I'll be goddamned if my wife and boys ever know who I really was during that period. I know the odds, and I'm lucky to be alive, but I still think using it every few hours. I miss it. A lot. I tried to kill a man. Only 2 people know the secret, my boyfriend and my sister. I know it sounds stupid, but I was 13 years old. My stepfather had been raping me and my sister on and off for about 6 years at that point, up until I hit puberty. He was also very physically abusive. The weird thing was, he never touched a drop of alcohol. He was a pastor. Then he stopped being interested when I developed. We even tried to tell our mother and got punished for lying about such a godly man. To this day, she doesn't believe us. Anyhow, I was so sick of being scared he would change his mind about not touching me anymore, and fed up with the bruises that I and my sister came up with a plan. Out of 7 siblings, we were the only girls, and so all the chores fell on us. Cooking, cleaning, you get the idea. Once we tried cooking and pouring chemicals into his food, that being cleaning detergent. Although he got violently sick, he didn't die. After that didn't work, she had an even better idea. She loosened the bolts on his truck to his tires. She said that she had seen it on an episode of CSI or something, I don't know, and wore gloves so she didn't leave behind any fingerprints on the bolts or the wrench. He had to leave for work for about a few hours, so we waited. Once he started driving, he noticed something was off and stopped to take a look at his car before he could have done anything. We've told no one. The good news is he's out of our lives, although he was never prosecuted. I carried the disappointment of being the only living child after the death of what would be my older sister. Raised in a very religious single-parent home with generational curses and generations of SA, all eyes were on me to do something right. Everything right. Basically isolated as a child because my mother was so scared something would happen to me. I was there to be Mom's friend when she needed someone to be around, and that was it. Spending most of my life depressed. I felt I was the one kid in the family that's someone to be proud of, drug addict cousins and cousins that were just worthless. But I'm criticized every day for raising my kids better than the family who raised me, and actually having a husband who loves and cares for me and our children. I'm even criticized for not forgiving my mother's friend who molested my child because no one believes me and thinks I was making it up. Even though my mother lies and twists every situation that makes her look bad, but I still feel that guilt to keep in contact with my family, because they are all that I've known. I don't know the exact age, but when I was very young, I have memories of my dad, who was drunk, getting in bed with me. I knew about sex at a way too early age, and I remember masturbating in preschool during nap time. I don't remember all the bits and pieces because it was so traumatic that my mind blocked it, thank God. Oddly enough, some of the memories were unlocked when I watched the movie Precious. It is so odd how the mind works. My mom ran away to her sister's for a year because my dad also beat her mercilessly, and I was molested by a female cousin, who years later, in my 40s, I confronted and demanded some type of, I don't know, an apology? I honestly don't know what I wanted or expected, but I knew there had to be some sort of reckoning. I told her what she did sent my young life into a spiral of sexual confusion and mistrust. She responded that she did what had been done to her. I'm still here. I survived. Maybe this isn't a very dark secret, but it's a secret I hardly tell at anyone. About 3 months after my long-term boyfriend of 7 years broke up with me, I landed a new job. The only sole reason I got a new job was actually to win back my ex, and it partially worked. However, a couple of months later, I gave up because I realized it was better for me to move on than get stuck on a guy who was okay with throwing 7 years worth of effort. 3 years later, I'm still working in the same place. 3 years later into the job, I had a sudden crush on a colleague whom I met on the very first day at work, and he eventually became my boyfriend. He is an amazing boyfriend and treats me very well. Everyone at work thinks we're a match made in heaven, but my family, my boyfriend, my colleagues, and the mutual friends we've made over the years never knew the reason why I applied for this job was to win back an ex. I always hear my different family members talking bad about each other to one another only for them to act like they are friends again to talk about somebody new together. For example, my mother would always talk to my sister about my grandmother, only to switch it up once the call is done and talk shit about my aunt to my grandmother as if she had not said something horrible about her a few minutes ago. My mother even recently started talking about me to others on the phone, characterizing me as horrible and selfish, even though I only learned about it from her. Her complaints are always about how she could do so much more than I could at my age. Maybe I am selfish, but calling me it all the time hurts, especially when it's told to all of my other family members and never to my face. I found out that my husband has saved photos with his crush before we met, photos with an ex-girlfriend he's still friends with on Instagram but has never told me, and photos with a trip with his ex-wife who I know he cannot stand. I can't ask why he still saves these in 2021 when they are from 2010 because I looked without his permission. I noticed the tattoo on the girl with who he has a picture laying in his bed next to him, and that's how I recognized they follow each other on Instagram. Otherwise, I'd never know who it was. I can't tell if she's married or divorced, but she likes his photos from time to time. Part of me just wants out because I feel really hurt and cheated by him for holding onto those photos. It makes me feel like I'm not enough for him. I was seriously contemplating killing my then alcoholic dad when I was around 13. He would drink every night and sit me down to tell me how he would murder my mother in brutal detail. He would degrade her every day and every night. This one night he went to the bathroom as we were talking, and he had this huge jug of alcohol on the kitchen table. I seriously thought I could get up, run to the kitchen, grab some bleach, and toss it down on his junk, and then he would be dead before I ever see my mom dead in any of the scenarios he put in my mind. I never did it. I don't think I was going to, but that comes to show you don't even know what you can do when you feel like you have to do something.
Reddit. What secret are you taking to the grave? NSFW. Story number 1. I worked for a shipping company at a customer desk. Guy I had known came in to ship a package. He was a known drug dealer in my town. He didn't recognize me though. The package was wrapped in duct tape. I took the package, brought it back, and made it disappear into my backpack. After my shift, I opened the package and found $37,890 in cash. I never went back to the job, never heard anything about it. I left Texas a month later with cash in hand. No country for old mailman. Story 2. I was giving my cat a belly rub and it jizzed all over my hand. Wow, You must give really good belly rubs. Story 3. All my friends think they watched me lose my virginity on my front lawn one fateful summer night when I was 13. We were actually just pretending to have sex in order to fuck with my friends. We were both too scared to actually do it. I've never corrected them. Story 4. I was in kindergarten, probably 5 years old, and during nap time I asked the girl to show me her penis. Don't leave us hanging, did she? Story 5. My dad's a National Socialist, and he regularly goes to meetings. I was raised in German folklore and the idea that I'm superior to others because I'm of German descent. I have plenty of Jewish and Slavish friends. I just tell them my dad died when I was younger. TLDR, my dad's a Nazi. Story 6. Uncle tragically passed away last year. Never married, no kids. Treated his 10 nieces and nephews like we could do no wrong. I also found out he was probably gay, and I don't think he was out to my family, or at least to most of us. No one would have had a problem with it. But it's hard to come out when my grandma just wants to set her youngest, who would have turned 50 in May, baby up with all the ladies, you know? She's persistent but means well. Is also a tad oblivious at times, but she's in her 80s. Anyway, after he passed, my dad and I were in charge of finding files for the book he was supposedly writing about our family. We wanted to finish the book and publish it in his name. My dad was having no luck finding files in his HD though, so I took a stab at it. Dad isn't the best at computers. I found dating site photos he had taken, shirtless mirror pics, and photos of guys I assume he was talking to. And in my opinion, he could have done better. You're the best uncle and only deserve the best. Also saw his history when I was looking through his browsers and bookmarks to get his emails and accounts. I forget if I deleted it yet. If I haven't, I will. I figured the search history was confirmation enough for me. Edit. Probably won't tell my cousin or sister after all. As I said, I assume the cousin knew. They were very close and talked frequently. And even if she doesn't matter. Won't change anything bad or good either way. And it's not my place to say anything. Thank you for your advice on that, folks. Miss you, Yubi. Story 7. I'm an out lesbian, but a few weeks ago I had sex with a male friend of mine. He's gay. We both got drunk and curious and had never gone with the opposite sex. Edit. We both actually kind of enjoyed it. And for those wondering, I am not a butch. I'm a femme. We had made out a few times before drunk, then we sort of got curious and decided to go for it. And we both have expressed interest in trying it again. The reason why I would take this to the grave is, as some people have pointed out, there's so much baggage involved in identifying as a bisexual woman, especially when I have been out as lesbian for most of my adult life. Coming out was the hardest thing I have ever done, and I'm ashamed to admit I was one of those lesbians who hated bisexual women as being fence-sitters, etc. And I worry that if people know that my friend and I slept together, it would just reinforce stereotypes about gay men and women just needing to find the right member of the opposite sex to set them straight. We are both single. I honestly don't know what to think. My friend is the first dude I have ever been attracted to, and I think I'm the first woman he's been sexually attracted to as well. So as much as we want to explore it, we're both a bit weirded out by it. Story 8. In 10th grade, my dad made a deal with me. If I got an average of 88%, he'd buy me a new laptop. Well, the marks came in and I only got something like an 84 to 85% average. Well, fuck that, I want my laptop. So I went online to the regional school board's website and downloaded a PDF template of the report card. Don't know why they would have this available. Used a PDF editor to fill in the blanks and voila, got a brand new laptop. No regrets. P.S. After I did this, I started selling customized fake report cards for $50 each. Story 9. I went to counseling for abuse after my parents divorced, and I was never abused, so they put me in the regular room with all the people there who were waiting for their siblings. I claimed my father abused me so I could go to the special room with all the abused kids. It was horrible. I had no right being in that room with all those people. They all were really messed up from what their parents had done to them, and I just got in so I could play Yu-Gi-Oh! Edit. I was probably 7 or 8, and from what I know, my father did not get in trouble. I see him every week. I didn't know what I was doing back then. This sounds like something Cartman would do. Story 10. When we were kids, a female cousin and I played doctor around the age of 6 or 7. Talked about it a few years ago around the age of 25, became deeply intimate, and have had really incredible sex several times over the last few years. She recently got married and we have since ended our relationship. We are both normal, successful, contributing citizens. You'd never know. Hopefully no one finds out. But I miss her and our level of intimacy. Story 11. When my brother committed suicide, I was walking into his house to go hang out, and I never knocked because we're best friends. So his house is my house, and my house is his house. Anyway, I walked in, got some food from the kitchen, and figured he might have a girl over because usually he'll hear me and say what's up from across the house, so I didn't bother him. I'd been in his house eating for about 10 minutes when I hear the gunshot that killed him. When anyone asks, I tell them I found him like that. I don't think I'll be able to ever tell anyone. I know that if I would have just knocked or walked down the hall, I might have saved his life. Edit. To give an insight on any reasoning for what my brother did, whether it be financial issues, relationship troubles, or what have you, I'll give you the last line of the short note he wrote before he died. It reads, "So I am truly sorry if you think I'm being selfish when I've been selfless my entire life, and it has left me with nothing. Rest in peace, brother. I miss you." Story 12. Me and my wife were going through tough times. I just got back from Afghanistan. I played Russian roulette with my 357 Magnum, reloaded. I lost. Getting a divorce now and alive. Story 13. When my cousin died a few years ago, my family went over to his house to look around for a sense of closure. I ducked away for a bit and noticed his computer was still on. On his desktop was his porn folder. I deleted it before my aunt and uncle saw it. Story 14. Might as well get this off my chest. Without going into great detail, purposely vague, more than 5 years ago, I was a part of a group of 3 to 5 people that would successfully take the MCAT in place of others for a fee. We were all adept at taking the exam. Our clients were old money types, with kids who could not make the cut, or didn't want to try. The fee was $100,000 plus any other extra charges. Fake fingerprints, IDs, prosthetics, you name it, and we did it. I had no qualms doing this, as my reasoning was, if they can't pass the exam, how in the fuck would they get through med school plus steps? Take their money and let them fail out of med. No problems, until one of the clients actually managed to get through school and had racked up some malpractice. Thankfully nothing too serious. It hit me hard to the point of attempted suicide. I quit, and went to therapy and the group disbanded, for other reasons, shortly thereafter. I'm doing much better now, but this info is staying with me from people that I know, and staying with you, random reader. This should be a movie. Story 15. It's nothing big. It's actually something really small and innocent, and I've just decided to tell no one in real life. When I was 5 years old, a friend at primary school, whose name is Jay, told me he liked a girl called A, and asked me never to tell anyone. Never have, and I never will. Almost 30 years and I haven't told anyone. Over the years, I've thought about saying something to someone about it, but I've never been able to bring myself to do it. Just something about the innocence of that promise, I guess. He wouldn't even care now. But 5-year-old Jay would, and I don't want to break my promise to him. You're a legend, man. Never let 5-year-old Jay down. Story 16. When I was a teenager, I was playing in a duo with a saxophonist. I played guitar on a cruise ship. The gig paid $200 each, and they gave me a check that I could cash and distribute to the saxophonist, who was also a really good friend. For a few weeks after the gig, I forgot about giving him the money, and he totally forgot as well. One day, I noticed the money in an envelope on my desk and wondered how long it would take him to remember and ask me about it. He never did. I still have the money. He's still my friend, and I've never done anything like that since, but I can't bring it up now, and probably won't. It was the actions of a greedy asshole past version of myself that I don't want to drag up at this point. Edit. I just want to add this for clarification. To all the people saying he knows and just doesn't know how to bring it up, he doesn't. He's a very forgetful person, and is also very direct. We're not just casual friends where he'd be afraid that we would stop seeing each other over money. We've known each other since middle school, and are incredibly close, so I guarantee you that he does not know. He wouldn't be afraid of asking if I did. Also, to the people saying that I'm still a greedy asshole for not giving it to him, I can see where you're coming from. However, the issue is a bit more complicated than that. This friend struggles with depression, paranoia, trust issues, etc. This is the only time I've done something like this. On countless occasions, I've comforted him at his worst. To drudge up the past this way might lead him to freak out. He would question if there were any other incidents in his head, he would fixate on it, and I don't want it to lead to depression. Edit 2. Fuck it, you've convinced me, Reddit. I'm meeting this guy later on today. I'll give him the money then with an extra $75. I'll update you in a few hours. Edit 3. Our plans for a late lunch got delayed until dinner. I'll update you tonight around 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Edit 4. Well, that's probably the last time I take advice from Reddit. I'll give you the version that everybody probably hoped to hear, and I'll give you what actually happened. Also, since I got some time to kill, I'll present it blow by blow instead of a brief summary. Ideal scenario. He and I are at the local pub, having beer and burgers when I make the confession. I decide to man up and give it to him honestly. He informs me that he had totally forgotten about the money and even the gig, but that he's glad I returned it with a large interest, that he forgave me. He then peels off $50 and bought drinks for everybody in the bar. We exchanged a bro hug, and we ride off in the sunset like the best of buddies in our vintage Cadillacs. Actual scenario. He and I were at the local pub, having beer and burgers when I made the confession. I decided to man up and give it to him honestly. Let's call him Harold for the sake of the story. Perhaps my first mistake was giving him the money and my sincere apologies after several too many drinks. We were far away from blackout drunk, but we weren't our normal, everyday selves. The first thing I did was take an envelope with $275 in it out of my jacket pocket and gave it to him wordlessly. He stared at me, bemused. "What's this?" "Open it," I said. He opened the envelope and took out the money, mostly in his 20s. He looked at me again, grinning, saying, "What did I do to deserve this?" I took a deep breath and told him everything. How I forgot about the money and wasn't reminded by him until I discovered it a few months later and never gave it to him. While I was explaining what had happened, his eyes went darker and darker with a sudden influx of emotion, until his previously smiling face looked shocked and angry at the same time. When I finished, he didn't say anything. He turned back to his beer and drank. "Well?" I asked, after almost a minute of silence. "Well, what?" he said. I didn't really know what to say at that point. I managed, "What do you think about the situation?" I asked a few questions about how he felt since such subjects such be approached delicately with him. "I don't know what to think," he said. I'm really sorry about all this. I don't know what I was thinking. If there's something I can do to make it up, just say the word." These types of exchanges went on for another minute, me prying and pleading to get at what he was thinking about and how I could aptly respond, and him giving short, brusque answers while brooding over his beer. Finally, something in him snapped. He told me, "It's not about the goddamn money. I don't care about the money. What I do care about is you being so deceitful. That I can take, because it means that you could have done countless things like this. This was a solitary incident. And as I said, I don't know what the hell I was thinking," I responded, trying to de-escalate the situation. Didn't work. "How the hell am I supposed to know that? Your word? I can't really believe your word anymore." "You can trust me, man," I said. "You always could." Emphasis on could, he responded. "That's what hurts, because you were always a person I could trust. Now I don't even know if I can do that. I don't know anything. I'm fucking confused about this shit." I put my hand on his shoulder and started to try to calm him down by talking about our history together, etc. But as soon as my hand hit his shoulder, he shrugged it off. His voice started to slur at this point. "You know what? Fuck you. And your money. Gotta go home." He stood up, shoved the envelope back to me, and walked out. Stood up a few minutes later and rode off into the sunset. No one by my side, in a used 2010 Kia Soul. I chalk his violent reaction up to a mixture of booze, his past issues, and the heat of the moment. I'm gonna talk to him tomorrow and try to discuss this in a less heated manner. And if this is my punishment for believing a bunch of internet strangers knew my friend better than I did, so be it. Story 17. In 2013, I traveled to Washington, D.C. for a business conference. My company was kind enough to put me and a coworker up in a very nice hotel, who had been killing it that year and deserved it. At day's end, we went down to the bar just to see what was going on and relax. There was a woman in the corner getting a fair bit of attention from people. They were all dressed up, tuxes and gowns. This was early though, like 6 p.m. They started shuffling off in small groups until she was alone. She then approached me and my friend didn't say a word and left a note on the bar. "Room XXX, knock at 2 a.m., not before, not after." It was like something out of a movie, which is all the more amusing because of what I'll reveal shortly. She never actually spoke to either one of us, and she didn't hand the note to either one of us. She put it down, between us, in full view of both of us. Did she mean for us both to show up? We spent the next few hours reasoning through things, and we determined that the invitation was for us both, which my friend was weirded out by. We're presuming sex. But side-by-side office urinal visits are awkward enough. Now I'm going to bang side-by-side with my coworker? I was game, but acted a little more apprehensive than was the case. He finally agreed. The hour rolled around, we met at the elevator, traveled to her floor, then knocked. She answered wearing the same fancy dress. No shoes, hair down. She immediately launched into this speech about how nothing that is about to happen can ever leave this room. My buddy looked like he was about to bolt. I just assumed we were going to take turns fucking her brains out. And so it started. Clothes came off, we're doing things. Looks and feels good to me. But then she invited us into the bathroom and told us to bring a phone. Huh? I asked for clarity, but none was given. But I found my pants and fished it out of my pocket. She knelt down in the bathtub and told me to start recording a video. Okay. Then she proceeded with this. "My name is Jane Doe. I'm in the movies X, Y, and Z. I love serving cock. I love piss in my mouth and cum on my face." She then asked us to pee all over her. While recording, my head was swimming. I had a big old boner and couldn't pee on command for her. Plus, I'm trying to process her saying she was in movies, like in them as an actress. Tell me you're going to blackmail me. She made us say it over and over. Tell me you're going to blackmail me unless I do exactly what you say. Tell me you own me forever with this video. Threaten to show someone. She got fucking off on that. We stayed total for another 30 to 40 minutes. Fucked some more. Did end up pissing on her after she made us come. And she was thirsty for it. All in all, it was the wildest sexual experience of my life. So, we're all done. Give me your phone, she says. I oblige. She deleted the videos after some fumbling and figuring out how, handed me my phone back, then she opened a drawer and counted off $500 for each of us. Not a word. Ever. I didn't recognize her in the bar, and wouldn't even have if I knew her name or that she was a movie star. I just don't follow Hollywood that closely. But yeah, she's relatively famous, like nominated for an Academy Award and stuff. Not A-list, but celebrity enough to wow us after the fact. My friend and I no longer work together. He took a job somewhere else. But as a running gag, we'll still find new press photos of her online and email them back and forth. No subject line, no words. I smile and laugh every time one comes through. I doubt many will believe this story, but it happened. Still makes me think, holy shit, when I recall it. I expect to live the rest of my life and not have a more exciting event happen to me. My only regret is that one of us didn't keep the note from the bar. Not that it would have proved anything, just a memento. It was Tom Cruise, wasn't it? Story 18. My girlfriend has homicidal thoughts and a history of mental health issues. She's sat me down and told me on numerous occasions that she has these strong urges to kill people. It scares the hell out of her, but I always tell her I won't let that happen. I plan on asking her to marry me soon. Edit. So from what I'm reading, it sounds like she most likely has OCD or has obsessive personality disorder. She doesn't have any history of violence and the urges are few and far between. They usually stem from sadness rather than anger. Her life would admittedly be better without certain people who are poison to her. I think it's her brain trying to assert control over situations where she has none. Because of her probable condition, she'd be the last person to actually act on those feelings. Also, I'd like to thank everyone for proving to me why I should take the secret to my grave. I'll be at your funeral.
What's a secret you're taking to the grave but willing to share? My brother's high school girlfriend gave him her velvet scrunchie to wear on his wrist as a symbol of their relationship. A little token that meant they were together. They were inseparable. The kind of high school sweethearts who everyone assumed would last forever. But then, a pandemic struck during their senior year and everything changed. When they broke up, my brother was devastated. Completely heartbroken, that scrunchie became even more significant to him. Meanwhile, I had my own special scrunchie. A lucky velvet one that I always used to tie up my hair before exams. But on the morning of one of my finals, when I was already stressed out because everything was happening online thanks to the pandemic, my scrunchie elastic snapped. I ran through my things, desperate to find a replacement, but I was out of hair ties. That's when I saw my brother's ex-girlfriend's scrunchie, sitting there in his room. Without thinking too much about it, I grabbed it, switched it with mine, and used it to tie up my hair. I never planned on keeping it, but after the exam, I just couldn't bring myself to give it back or even mention it to my brother. A few months after they broke up, my brother and his friends decided to have a symbolic bonfire to help him move on. They gathered all the love letters she'd written him and burned them. Later that night, when I picked him up, he was still emotional and he told me, the hardest part was getting rid of the scrunchie because it still smells like her. My heart sank when I heard that. I didn't have the courage to tell him the truth, that the scrunchie he thought he'd let go of was actually still with me, wrapped around my wrist during my final, and tucked away in my drawer afterward. It's been 4 years since then, and my brother has moved on with his life. He's happy in a new relationship and that painful chapter is behind him, but he still has no idea that I have the scrunchie. The real one. The one that still probably smells faintly of her. That scrunchie has more plot twists than their entire relationship. Story 2. When I was in college, I deceived my LDR boyfriend, Jack. He found out when he was checking my phone and email and saw the chat messages. There were a lot of tears and pain. I stopped seeing the other person immediately as I felt guilty and broke all contact. I'm sure this guy was emotionally challenged and had a hard time as well. Jack asked me to come overseas and marry him. I guess he thought it would be a sign of loyalty and I obliged. But nobody in either family or anyone really knew about it except for the two of us. People just knew that I was planning on moving overseas for work. I got married and had to come back to my hometown and wait for a year for visa approval. During that time, I met this colleague at work and was instantly smitten. We dated and did dirty stuff in the office the whole 8 months I was there, thinking all of this would be casual and I'd move overseas. Little did I know that I was head over heels in love with Bob. I left and we still kept in touch. He loved me too at the time. After 3 years of keeping in touch, Bob said he couldn't take it anymore, which I understood. He got married and has a kid. Bob never knew that I was married to Jack. I was never the same. It's been 10 years and I'm still in love with Bob, yet married to Jack. Been diagnosed as I've been yearning for him all this. I've never been affectionate with Jack since I can't feel anything for anyone since I've been with Bob. Jack never forced me either. We don't have kids yet, and when everyone asks me about it, I just tell them I'm not ready. While the truth is that I'd only ever wanted kids and a family with Bob. Never opened up about him in therapy either. It hurts me when I see Bob with his kid and wife. Serves me right for not being faithful. It's probably my results for what I did. I want to divorce Jack, but I guess I'm scared to be alone, and so does he. Jack doesn't know about all these either. If there was a grave here now, I would gladly jump into it. If there was an award for most complicated love life, she'd win by a landslide. Story 3. My younger sister and I were in high school at the same time. She was the most beautiful girl in the whole school, and surprisingly this caused her to not have many friends. She did have one group of girlfriends who frightened her and eventually removed her out of the group. One of the girls was her childhood best friend. It was obviously a jealousy thing, as she's also the sweetest person you could meet. One night my hooligan friends and I were driving around vandalizing people's cars we didn't like. I know, so cool, just with things like glitter, beans, toilet paper, etc. No damage was actually done. These people were also just mean and we had fun doing it. We got to one girl's house whose little sister was the main person inflicting fear on my little sister. We watched from the car as they arrived home, and I said, "Y'all stay here, I got this one." I went up and knocked on the door, and the mom answered, and I said, "Hi, is Lexi here?" Lexi came to the door and her face dropped. I told her that if she ever put my sister's name in her mouth ever again, I'd come right back here. I pointed over to the car with my friends' faces all glued to the window and said, "And they'll come too." They left my sister alone, and she thought it was because she was the bigger person and felt proud of herself for never lowering herself to their level. I never told her. Story 4. I know my friend's Reddit account, but she has no idea what I do. She's an incredibly kind and thoughtful person. We first connected on Facebook, bonding over our shared love for history. It all started because she found my profile picture cute, and we struck it off from there. She's from Europe, and despite the distance, we've become close friends. We even met in person when she flew out to see me, and honestly, she's fantastic. Back when pandemic first began, she was going through a really tough time. The stress was overwhelming for her. Her dad was so anxious about the situation that he nearly gave himself a heartache. And her boyfriend, don't even get me started on him. The rage I felt toward him was something I'd rarely experienced before. One day I was casually browsing Reddit, and I stumbled upon a post that caught my eye. It was an amazing account of the Mycenaeans and a deep dive into the possible true origins of the Trojan event. I found it fascinating, so I started following the user. They were clearly passionate about the subject, and it turned out they were getting their PhD in that very field. But then, one day, as I was scrolling through the profile, something strange happened. I noticed they had started posting personal diary entries, airing out their frustrations and feelings. It was clear they didn't have many people to talk to in real life, and they needed a space to vent. One of their posts included a picture of their pet and boyfriend, and that's when it struck me. I knew this person. It wasn't just a random Redditor, it was my friend. The topics, the style of writing, everything started to click. This was the same stuff we had talked about for hours. I realized I had unintentionally stumbled into her safe space. Reddit was her diary, the one place she could talk about things she couldn't share with anyone else. I knew that if she found out I had discovered her account, she would likely delete or abandon it altogether. That thought made me feel guilty, like I was intruding in something personal. So I did the only thing I could think of. I blocked her account and deleted any saved comments I had. I wanted to preserve her privacy and her peace of mind. I'll never tell her that I found her on Reddit, and I'll never reveal what I know. Now I know what some of you might be thinking. Didn't I just give away enough details for her to figure this out if she ever came across this post? After all, I mentioned her nationality, her area of study, and even the fact that she flew out to meet me. But don't worry, I've changed all those details here. So rest assured, Broseph, you'll never truly know who I'm talking about. Story 5. I have a confession to make, and it's a whopper. One time, my friends and I thought it would be hilarious to pull off a prank at our school. We had the bright idea of going into all the bathrooms and using a ton of paper to block the pipes under the sinks. You see, the sinks had cheap plastic pipes that were easily removable, which made replacing them a breeze for the maintenance staff. We carefully made our way to the bathrooms, giggling as we removed the pipes, stuffed them full of paper towels, and then carefully reattached them. Once we were satisfied that each sink was rigged for maximum chaos, we turned on every single faucet and shut all the bathroom doors behind us. With our prank set in motion, we felt a rush of adrenaline as we strolled back to the cafeteria. As we were eating and laughing, the fire alarm suddenly blared, echoing through the halls like an angry hornet. Fear ensued. We were herded outside to the soccer field in the freezing cold, barefoot and shivering because we weren't allowed back in the building to grab our shoes or jackets. I remember standing there, bundled up in just a t-shirt and jeans, feeling a mix of excitement and dread as fire trucks and police cars arrived on the scene. We stood there for what felt like an eternity, at least an hour, while our parents were called to come pick us up. As we huddled together in the cold, my heart raced with the realization of the chaos we had caused. Nobody had any idea what was happening, but I felt a knot of worry tightening my stomach. Deep down, I knew it was our fault, and the guilt began to set in. Even though my friends and I kept our cool on the surface, we exchanged nervous glances, each of us silently confirming that we were in this together. Eventually, the fire department declared everything safe. Our school was closed for about a month and a half while repairs were made. The whole situation felt surreal. It was as if we had slipped into some strange alternate reality. All students had to be relocated to another nearby school, which was much larger than ours. Imagine being tossed into a new environment with kids you didn't know, all while trying to keep a secret that weighed heavily on our minds. My friends and I used to chat and play Xbox together, and in one of our late-night conversations in the chat room, we all agreed to never speak of the prank again. It became our unspoken pact, a secret we would carry with us forever. Every day at the new school felt like walking in eggshells, constantly worrying that someone would find out what we had done. I couldn't shake the feeling of worry that lingered in the back of my mind, mixed with a tinge of guilt and a splash of exhilaration. Though I knew the prank was just for fun, the results had turned our lives upside down in a way I never anticipated. Looking back, I realized it was a foolish stunt, but at the time, it felt like the ultimate adventure, one that we'd never dare to repeat, making a splash to a whole new level. Story 6. I never wanted to be a father, and yet here I am, staring at my newborn daughter, feeling an overwhelming mix of emotions that I can hardly articulate. It's been only 4 weeks since she entered this world. Instead of the joy that I thought I'd feel, I find myself waiting for the moment she leaves me, as if that might somehow be the answer. When I look over at her, sleeping so peacefully in her crib, I can't help but feel a surge of love that I never expected to feel. It washes over me like a wave, pushing aside the doubts and fears that have settled in the pit of my stomach. But just beneath that love is a nagging voice that reminds me of the choices that led to this moment. She's the outcome of my decision to stay with my partner, who has made it clear time and again that having a child was non-negotiable. As I watch her tiny fingers curl and uncurl, I can't shake the knowledge that my partner wants another child. The thought sends chills down my spine, and I realize that this time, I will firmly say no. I know it could destroy a relationship, but honestly, part of me is counting on that. It feels like the only way to reclaim part of myself that has been lost in the shuffle of compromise and sacrifice. I've sacrificed so much already, and I find myself questioning what I have left to give. I moved in with her just months after we started dating to help her take care of her 2 sons from a previous relationship. I thought I was stepping up, being the supportive partner, but looking back, I see it differently now. I've sabotaged jobs to ensure I could be there for her, often prioritizing her health over my own. I torpedoed my own master's degree, setting aside my dreams. My partner often complains that I'm not the same man she fell in love with. It's true. She has fought to change so much of who I am that it feels like nothing remains of the person I used to be. Story 7. I was in college on track to achieve my bachelor's degree back in 2008. My graduation ceremony was contingent on me completing a summer class after graduation. I walked to the ceremony, and then my family threw me a big graduation party, and I was showered with gifts, love, and support. They were so proud of me. The problem was I thought I would cakewalk the summer class, but ended up dropping out. I ended up working full-time not long after that, and quickly got promoted and got compensated well, so going back to school to finish my degree wasn't really in the plans. In 2015, I quietly took a remote class to do my degree requirements. The day I received my diploma, I cried my eyes out because I couldn't celebrate with anyone except myself. I couldn't come around to telling anyone I didn't graduate back in 2008. I don't want anyone thinking I misled them. Story 8. I was in a horrific marriage with my best childhood friend. We were together for 7 years and have 2 children. He was unemployed until I made his resume and applied for the job for him in our 4-year relationship. He also has a drinking problem and a bad father. I was the primary parent, worked full-time and had horrible pregnancies, which included trauma from his family and health problems. During my second pregnancy, my ex-husband attempted in front of me and our daughter. I called the police and got a restraining order. The relationship was very emotionally abusive and controlling, and I was scared. He lied to everyone for 3 years, and even gaslit me about saying it never happened. Both of our families hated me, called me unstable, and I was treated badly because of this. Unfortunately, during pandemic, he confessed that this happened. I immediately told him that I wanted a divorce. That was the final straw. We were still living together with my parents because we had to move out of the apartment we were in due to financial problems. My coworker was moving out and recommended us to her landlady. I did so much work getting us the house while still working full-time and being the main parent. I remember being so unbelievably exhausted and him doing nothing to help. As soon as he moved in, he took the bedroom. So I was forced to sleep in the utility room that had no heat or air conditioner. The couch I was sleeping on was covered in bugs, and I could not stretch out my legs. He asked me to take the name off the lease because I was planning on moving out in 3 months. I took my name off the lease and he threw all my work stuff in the bag the next week and told me to get out. I worked from home. I remember this happening often, and I would have to drive around trying to find a place to work while he screamed at me to get off his property or get out of his house. Because of that incident, I was homeless. He took me to court and got primary custody over children, so he claimed them both on taxes and stole the child plus checks, which we had been using for bills, and told me that daycare was my responsibility. I lost 2 jobs because of this. Fast forward several years, I have consistently had to move, pay for daycare, pay insurance for me and the kids, pay his bills, and I have also paid for his King's Dominion membership, food, Christmas, holiday, and even birthday. I want the kids to see a good co-parenting relationship and also have a good place to live, but he's completely screwed me over. He's torn my life apart time after time in personal and traumatic ways. I've had problems with drinking and substance misuse to cope. I will never tell my children any of this because they love their dad, and I don't want them to change their opinion of him. They have a safe and happy life because of me. That is all that matters, even though it breaks my heart. Story 9. I just live to make other people happy. I don't really have or have yet found a purpose in life because the idea of an afterlife to me just seems like normal life with extra steps and view reincarnation as a replay button. It feels impossible for anything I do now to hold significance, knowing that Earth is impermanent and everything will be reset, reduced and or forgotten to nothing given enough time. While I have some goals, it honestly just either means to an end for me to not worry about the people I care about and continue to live for my selected few friends and family, or curiosity I just want to state before I go on. While I'm not planning any attempts, I long for a natural death or for someone else to make that mistake that lets me see what's next. To most people, I'm just seen as a resource, and I can't even serve that purpose before I'm gone. If it weren't for a few important people in my life, I would have already given up, donating my body to those who need it more than I do. I'm not trying to brag or anything, but I don't think my family could take another loss, and me and my sibling are the glue in a big family. My sibling once admitted that if I were to die unfairly, they'd likely follow me. That would probably trigger a chain reaction. My mother, already struggling to cope with losing her own mother a few years ago, wouldn't be able to handle losing 2 of her children. So I feel dragged to be there for them until I find something to give my life meaning to me, or at least that's the hope. Story 10. When I was a younger person, this incident happened around 12 years ago. I found myself in a situation that will leave deep scars. My little sister had gotten involved with some rather unsavory individuals. Concerned for her safety and well-being, my parents made the decision to force me to swap phones with her. At the time, I was still paying off my phone and couldn't afford to get a new one. This was before the era of automatic unknown caller blocking options, so I quickly became inundated with calls. I was receiving 2 to 3 calls a day from various numbers, most of which were either scammers or those friends of my sister who were demanding to know her whereabouts. When I didn't comply with their requests, things escalated. The threats turned real as they began sending me threats and showing up in my workplace, creating a hostile environment not just for me but also for my girlfriend at the time. The situation dragged on for 2 years, during which I received minimal help from the police. Their response was disheartening. They dismissed my fears, telling me that guys shouldn't feel intimidated, and urging me to get my stuff together and move on. My therapist at the time seemed to echo the sentiments of the police, advising me to toughen up and also breaching confidentiality by notifying my parents about what I was experiencing. While I'm not entirely sure how ethical that was, I like to believe confidentiality should be upheld. I also have a profound fear of phone calls. The sound of a ringing phone sends me into a spiral of worry, as I relive the moments when those defrauders would call and threaten me. In public situations, I find myself overly cautious, constantly scanning my surroundings for potential threats, which drains my mental state and leaves me feeling exhausted. Despite all of this, I still find it incredibly hard to talk about my experiences. I fear being ridiculed, which makes sharing my story feel even more daunting. However, I'm currently working through these feelings with a different health professional who is more understanding and supportive. Hey, good for you, man. Anyways, if you're enjoying the video, don't forget to hit that subscribe and like button for more videos like this. Story 11. One of my friend's dad texted me, by mistake, a message intended for his secret lover. This was more than 15 years ago, and I was in high school. We were on vacation with a group of people, including a bunch of my friends and their respective families. Keep in mind, this was the time you had to pay for roaming services while traveling abroad. So the only way my friend and I had to communicate was through his dad's phone and mine. One night I received a text saying, "I love you, good night," from his number. I knew it wasn't my friend texting me good night, and my mind went erratic trying to figure out why and to whom he was texting this to. I spoke to my parents, and they told me not to say anything until we knew more. The dude didn't even say, "Sorry, wrong number," nothing. A week into the vacation trip, we were all hopping into vans to do a tour. Randomly, I ended up seated next to my friend's dad. Minutes into the van ride, he asked, "How far are we from our country?" To which my dad replies, "Like an hour or so by plane." He pulled out his phone. I began to sweat. He searched for a name that the first 4 letters matched my last name. I popped up first in the search. That's when I knew he sent the goodnight message by mistake. He proceeded to text the person that had a typical male name. "So close yet so far. I miss you." I was trembling. I wanted to laugh. I didn't know what to do. Was he being sassy? Was his wife aware? Is this an open marriage? What am I missing? I talked to my parents again when we reached our destination, and they told me not to get involved and that he was obviously having a secret relationship. 2 years after that, my friends and I were gathered in this particular friend's house and talking about everything and anything. After a couple of drinks, this friend opened up about how his dad was with a woman from their office, that he had her under a male nickname to avoid suspicion, that he had put a lot of things under her name and that it was a horrible legal battle and they all suffered a lot, and that they're almost certain the affair started around the same time we all had that vacation trip. I had to act surprised, hugging her with the rest of my friends like I knew nothing. Still, to this day, she doesn't know that I've known since almost day one. If there's ever a need for a spy in the family, he's the one to call. Story 12. I have a pretty mild secret that I'm willing to share, one that speaks to the complexities of friendship and perception. I have a friend who has been single for an extended period, and whenever we find ourselves discussing relationships or girls, he always circles back to one particular girlfriend he had in high school. It's almost as if this relationship has become a cornerstone of his identity, a narrative he revisits time and time again. He speaks about her with such nostalgia and intensity, embellishing the story with details about their passion and connection, emphasizing how life circumstances ultimately pulled them apart. What he doesn't realize, however, is that I know for a fact that the girl he refers to did not have a relationship with him in the way he believes. I've spoken with at least 3 different people who flirted with her during the timeline of his so-called relationship, and I know she went on to have a significant relationship with another guy for several years before moving away. From what I can gather, my friend was never more than an orbiter in her life during high school, someone who lingered in the sidelines, hoping for more but never really achieving it. It's strange to see him twist reality to make their friendship appear like a full-fledged romance. I can see the hurt and longing in his eyes when he talks about her, and it's hard for me to reconcile the truth with the fantasies built up in his mind. Part of me feels a sense of responsibility to correct him, to set the record straight, but I just can't bring myself to do it. I understand that everyone has their own way of coping with heartbreak and disappointment, and perhaps this is his way of keeping hope alive. So, instead of challenging his narrative, I find myself nodding in agreement whenever he brings her up. I listen patiently, providing him with the emotional support he seems to crave. It's a delicate balance, being a good friend while holding on to a truth that could potentially shatter his carefully constructed reality. I've learned to navigate this unspoken agreement, maintaining the facade to protect his feelings. I can't help but wonder if he'll ever come to realize the reality of the situation, or if he'll continue to romanticize what was truly never there. It's a fascinating yet somewhat heartbreaking glimpse into the way we all cling to our pasts, creating narratives that serve to shield us from the complexities of real life. Memory can be a funny thing. If he keeps telling himself some stuff, eventually he'll believe that it happened. So he might not be lying and genuinely thinks that it was true. Story 13. My big brother is a die-hard Ronaldo fan. His loyalty to the soccer star is unmatched, and he's followed every game, every goal, and every achievement for as long as I can remember. Around the time of my brother's birthday, I found myself in Dallas, where, coincidentally, Ronaldo had a game scheduled in the city. I saw this as my golden opportunity to give my brother an unforgettable gift. Excited by the prospect, I quickly asked my uncle to take me to a local sports store. With my savings in hand, I bought a Ronaldo jersey, imagining how thrilled my brother would be to receive it. The anticipation of the moment kept me buzzing with excitement as we made our way to the hotel where Ronaldo was staying. I waited outside for hours, clutching the jersey and hoping for just a fleeting glimpse of my idol. But as time passed, my hopes began to fade. Ronaldo never came out, and soon enough, my flight back home was approaching. On the flight back, I took a deep breath and decided to sign the jersey myself. I spent time studying Ronaldo's signature, practicing it in my mind until I felt confident enough to replicate it. When I got home, I found a couple of believable photos of Ronaldo walking and posed in a way that suggested I had taken those pictures myself. I carefully edited them to make them look authentic, enhancing the illusion that I had actually met him and captured those moments. Finally, the day came when I presented the jersey to my brother. As he tore through the wrapping paper, I could see the confusion and excitement dancing across his face. When he finally revealed the jersey and saw the signature, he fell to his knees in shock and happiness. The sheer joy in his eyes was priceless, and I knew I had pulled off the perfect surprise. Even now, 15 years later, he still cherishes that jersey as if it were a treasure. He talks about it weekly, proclaiming it the best gift he has ever received. To this day, I can't bring myself to tell him the truth. The joy it brought him is something that can never be taken away, and I want him to hold on to that happiness forever. So, the secret remains locked away with me, taken to the grave. And your brother doesn't happen to have Reddit, does he? Story 14. My younger brother and his wife were struggling financially after having a kid. They were both in school full-time and both worked to try and make ends meet. But one particular month, things were looking really rough because he got injured and couldn't work. I was working overtime at a really well-paying job at the time. So one night after getting paid, I went to their place and put an envelope with my entire pay into their mail slot in the door. I was accompanied with a letter I typed, pretending to be an old lady in the apartment building who had seen them with their newborn and wanted to help the new parent out. The relief they got from it was repayment enough for me. I don't want him to ever find out it was me. And now that he's graduated, he's the one working at a well-paying job and I'm currently disabled, unable to work. Funny how life works out that way. Story 15. One day I was looking for my social security card in my mom's briefcase. She kept all her important documents, birth certificate, tax stuff, etc. When I was looking for it, I noticed a letter that said treatment plan. My mom always saw a therapist and I knew I shouldn't have looked into it, but I read what she struggled with. My mom was taken advantage of by her father. He came to visit us for the first time 1 year ago as he lives in a different country, and it took everything in me not to strike him. Story 16. I had a group of female friends in college, and pretty much at the beginning of the project, she started ghosting me. Wasn't helping me with a project, would slip in and out of class like she was avoiding people. After a few days of this, I sent her a text asking if I did or said something that made her uncomfortable or if something was going on in her personal life and she just didn't have time to work on the project. No response. So I found some of her friends and came to find out she had a very controlling and jealous boyfriend that didn't want her talking to me. He was threatening her and all sorts of stuff. I knew he was a party goer, so I waited until a party he was throwing ended and everyone had left his room, and submitted an anonymous report to campus police about drinks in his room. He got expelled, and I'm sure whatever charges come with underage possession of drinks. 2 days later, she was back to working on the project, and I pretended like nothing happened and never once brought up the situation. She's now currently married to a different guy with a kid, and seems like, at least by social media standards, she's living her best life. Story 17. My mom was a substitute teacher whom I believed had a lover with a female high school student. I remember accompanying my mom going to their house for tutoring, but they would just close the bedroom. I'd be told not to tell my dad. He never showed up while the student's mom was present, and after some time my mom would park the car a little further away to not be in the driveway. This persisted for years, as I remember seeing Halloween H20, which was released in 1998 in theaters with this person. Also remember watching scary movies in 2000 on VHS with him. I was born in late 87, so I'd be about 10 through 12 during this time. I think the individual was about 6 years older than me. I can also vaguely recall seeing Pocahontas with this person, which was 1995, which would make the age more sickening. But I'm not sure if that happened with them or not, and I'm just remembering them talking about it. My sister is way older than me, and I have no idea if she knows. For whatever reason, it used to just be me who would accompany my mom. I have a lot of memories, including them watching home movies of her high school friends, talking about which ones were better, and also partaking in a game. I recall an incident where my father smashed a wedding picture, but I didn't know the context. He also used to work a lot of overtime around that time. I was a late bloomer and very innocent. It took me over a decade to realize what the situation was, and I know that bringing it up won't solve anything. I will make jokes that would give a hint in front of her just to see if she gets nervous. I think she's convinced herself, I do not know. But I truly dislike that vile woman. Story 18. My brother took advantage of a little neighbor girl. He bragged about it to me and then tried to threaten me with it when I wanted to tell my parents. He said, "You'll get in trouble too. Ignore her or we'll both get in trouble because you knew about it too." After decades, he married when he was 32 to a girl he taught in college. He dated her for 2 years. My mom knew about it and covered for him by saying the girl was old for her age. She's an old spirit. One night before he got married, he bragged about how this girl looks like the neighbor girl from so long ago. He told me how he found his fiancée as a college professor at his community college in Orem. He was watching all the new freshman girls in their first semester and he could see she was broken. He bragged about the fact that she didn't have a father in her life, so it was really easy to convince her and her mom to let him date her. I was grateful that I was deploying out to Iraq the next week. He even laughed and told me not to tell anyone before I pass away in war. I only told my wife at the time about what he did. Years later, I found out that my ex was hurting my kids and had slept with other men for 6 years. I filed for divorce. She made up horrible stories about me in order to get full custody of my kids. The police came and interviewed everyone from work in my new neighborhood. They even called my brother. He told them the exact same lies as my ex. Eventually, the police closed the case due to my ex-wife's lies and that my boss provided evidence that I was at a work party the night they claimed it happened. The police said that my brother's interview was word for word the same as my ex. That is what made them realize that it was a manufactured situation. To this day, my brother claims I'm into someone younger than me and this has caused a big problem in our family dynamics. I've cut off contact with my brother and one of my sisters because they chose to believe my ex. Everyone else treats me kindly, but I've been labeled as the creepy uncle because of this. The last conversation I had with my brother in 2019, he told me that he knows that I didn't do anything my ex claimed. She threatened him, but he feels it is better that I suffer for his actions. He doesn't want to hurt the family by telling everyone who he really is. He's still married with 8 kids and is a professor in Hawaii at a very conservative religious university. I live 15 hours by plane away from him and 4 hours away from my family. He helped wreck my reputation, and since that day, I've worked like a dog for 6 years to rebuild my life. Because of him, I'll never have a close relationship with my parents or other siblings. I look forward to the day my youngest turns older. I will publish everything he has done, along with my ex, and pay my child support and alimony payments worth in advertising for their work and homes. Until then, I quietly look for that neighbor girl so I can apologize to her. I hope she's living her best life. Story 19. Well, let me tell you the secret, and I was about to lose everything by going to jail. But I was living with my parents at the time. I was 23 in 2009. I didn't move out until I got married to my ex-wife. But I was driving home from a party. I did drink a little too much, as I was driving a little inebriated. So tired, didn't even know there was a cop behind me, and after I got pulled over, and getting my driver's license and registration ready, the police officer came to the driver's side window and asked, "Why are you swaying side to side?" I lied to the officer and told him, "I'm tired and just got off work. My parents' place was a block away." And to my shock, the cop said, "You know what? Go home and go to bed. I don't have time for this." After, he left from behind my truck and I went home. Since then, I've never told my parents, friends, family, and my ex-wife about that night. And now, if I get too tipsy at a party or bar, I'm staying at that person's house, or if I'm at a bar, I'm calling a taxi or an Uber. Story 20. I broke an old Red Ryder BB toy that my uncle prized. He was showing it off. It was either one he had since he was a kid or just like one he had as a kid. I can't remember. Nobody was around and I picked it up and tried to pump it, or whatever the term is, and the trigger just fell out. I leaned it up against a wall and walked away. When it was found broken, I kept my mouth shut. Someone said they thought they remember my younger cousin messing with it, and he already had a reputation as a troublemaker. He took the fall. Story 21. I was the head of an IT department at a credit union. One of my programmer's wives was diagnosed with colon illness. He needed time out of the office and his paychecks were interrupted. The department took up a collection and I contributed what everyone did, but I also went to the grocery store and bought several $100s in gift cards so we could buy food. I gave them anonymously because I didn't want the other guys on the team feeling like they needed to donate more. The programmer asked everyone, including me, if they knew where the gift cards came from. He told me they made a big difference and just wanted to thank the person. I never told him it was me. His wife passed away at 39. He passed away a few years ago in his mid-50s. His life was hard enough. He didn't need to feel indebted to me. Story 22. My older brother passed away when I was in 3rd grade, and my mother would have long conversations with me about him, and At one point asked me if I thought he would have been fine being cremated. I of course said yes, but the truth is, he hated the thought of being cremated. And a month before this incident, me and my brother had been talking while doing chores on the topic of a boy who used to live in our neighborhood but passed away due to health problems and how his parents had decided to cremate him, and my brother was not at all shy to tell me his thoughts of how it was stupid, and cremation was something he would never want done. I never plan on telling my mom, as what's done is done, but I occasionally find myself staring at his urn and regretting not telling her when she asked. Story 23. So, my best friend of 4 years just ended our friendship over something foolish. She has a brother who's sassy, and so am I. One day, his boyfriend invited me to the back of the house and asked me to play a game with him, which I did because we were all cool. Now, just to clarify, I'm not a drinker at all. I absolutely despise alcoholic beverages now, but at the time, he offered me a drink and went ahead to get me intoxicated. Basically, he took advantage of me even though I told him to stop. Story 24. It's definitely not that bad, but when I was in middle school, I went through a bad breakup and stalked him after that. I knew his classes, his friends, his social media. Well, I was eating in the class that was split in half during lunch, and his stuff was there. Me and a few of my friends hid his stuff when the teacher was out of the room. We put it underneath a table in the corner of the room and put a chair in the way so it wasn't visible. He ended up going home with nothing but his phone on a 3-day weekend. I saw him later that day, frantically looking in every class he had that day, and he was audibly getting upset about it. I still feel bad for doing it. Story 25. In the early 1980s, I was in the military. On an extended deployment from Japan to Korea, I rented a room behind a bar. It was between operations and I was part of a skeleton crew that stayed back to maintain our tent camps and facilities. I slept in that room nightly for several months. Rent was cheap and in a cold tent during the Korean winter. My rent covered a decent-sized room, electricity, and charcoal for heat. I bought a futon to sleep on, a radio, and a small electric cooktop. The bonus was I hung out in the bar often. The girls all got along with me, and I got the occasional free short time for a couple of them. A great time to be young. Story 26. The secret I am willing to share here is that when I was in 8th grade, at the time I got really into fights and stuff. I would make them out of anything. One day I saw some gloves that my teacher had. I stole a pair, and when I got home, I made a out of them. After I was done, I took the gloves off and put them back in my backpack. 2 days later, my teacher was looking through bags for a senior trip and asked if there were gloves. I gave her the ones that I used 2 days ago. What's your secret? I'll start. I'm afraid to change my life. And for those of you that want elaboration, I don't have a terrible life, but I wish it could be better. I dream of being a better person, doing the things I think I love, meeting someone I love, pursuing my dreams, taking chances and risks that will hopefully work out for the best. Generally, just living my life to the fullest. But I'm afraid of leaving what I have behind for fear of losing it. Or, well, here you go. I have a good job, but it's not my passion. I don't want to work in this firm for the rest of my life, but I don't know where I'd go. I like the money and the comfort it offers, but I'll never love this job like the people around me appear to be, because maybe they're more like me than I know. I mentioned passion because I don't even know what my passion is. I like video games, rock climbing, swimming, and a few other things, but I don't think I'll live with the comforts I have now if I start changing things. Can I afford my car, house, bills with a job associated with those interests? Are those genuine passions, or are they just activities that allow me to escape from my mundane life? I try to find out what my true passions are. I think what bothers me most, what images, events, activities bother me. I'm turning honesty to on here, so please bear with me. The next few sentences may horrify you. I don't care about the vast majority of the human race. Kids in Africa, don't care. Mom harms her kid in America, don't care. Huge catastrophe anywhere in the world, don't care. Don't get me wrong, I think these things are tragedies and wish they'd never happened, but they've never mattered to me enough to change anything about my life. I'm not some inhuman though. If I see something terrible happening in front of me, I can take direct action to stop it. I will. Hell, I have. I was at the beach with my family a few years back and saw a kid getting pulled out by the current. He was unable to stay above the water and kept slipping below the surface. I didn't hesitate. I swam right out to him and got him back to the shore to his mother, who had no clue. I did it because I knew it was the right thing to do. I got off track there, but my point was that I don't care about a lot of things. The few things I do seem to care about, I can't see a future in, or don't want to have a future in. For example, I despise animal mistreatment. If someone made me choose between saving a child or saving a random animal, I'd be leaning towards the animal. But I don't want to spend my life seeing the results of animal mistreatment all day long, not even once in a while volunteering. Ignorance is bliss, right? I'm attracted to a lot of women, but my interaction with them is minimal. All my life, I've been putting off relationships with women. When I was in high school, I didn't have a job or a car, and I was not particularly popular, so I never made moves because I had nothing to offer. At least that's what I tell myself, because I'm not sure I can admit it was cowardice. When I was in college, I had no money or car, so again, not a whole lot to offer. Now I have a job, a car, decent money, and a nice car, but I'm still finding reasons to put off relationships. Now it's that my life isn't established, etc., blah blah blah. I know this is a problem, but I'm not addressing it. I'm procrastinating and ignoring my flaws. As you read this, you might think I'm shallow if I think that's all I can offer. I know it's not. In fact, I know I appear to be a really good guy. I have a decent sense of humor, if highly sarcastic. I'm not a I treat people around me with respect, and I'm extremely tolerant. I'm an emotional rock when it comes to just about everything. On the surface, very little phases me. I'm capable of giving decent advice and equally capable of shutting up and letting someone solve their own problems. I possess some excellent qualities, and I think I'd make one hell of a boyfriend. I'm sitting here writing this thinking, hey, if you have all these things, why aren't you in a great relationship right now? I don't know for sure. I know one of the reasons is that I live with my parents. I feel like I should be moved out and living my life right now. Do I want someone I love to know how pathetic that is? All right, then fix that. Why am I still living with my parents? I tell myself and others that I haven't moved out because prices are too high at the moment, but that's a lie. I don't know why I'm not looking for houses when I get home. I'll just start up some games instead. But why? I know looking for houses would be the better choice, but I'm not. Now that's an easy solution. Stop playing games. Gaming is an escape mechanism for me. If gaming is removed, I'll find another means of escape. The root of the issue needs to be addressed. I have this tendency to only deal with something when it becomes an uncomfortable or noticeable problem. I got a car because I needed it. I got a job because I needed it. I'm looking for a house because I need to move out. All my life I've been procrastinating and ignoring the obvious because, I don't know, maybe I just don't like change or discomfort. Whatever the case, I've never been able to do things that I might love for fear of letting go of what I have. I get all choked up when I watch movies that have people change their lives for the better because of a paradigm shift. I know I need to make similar changes, but I never do. It's like I need to be forced to do something before it can happen. I watched Click a few months back and nearly started crying when I compared my life to the movie. Okay, I actually did cry. I was literally lecturing myself in the mirror about changes I need to make in my life. Not the first time this has happened. I used to be severely depressed, which is a common story in the thread. I'm far less depressed than I used to be. I'm mostly not depressed because I find ways of escaping and ignoring it. The things I mentioned earlier, gaming in particular, allow me to get away from reality. I try not to think of where I am versus where I wish I was. I can't help but wonder, even if I did make changes that I think would be better for my life, I always fear that those dreams may not be all they're cracked up to be. What if I spend a copious amount of money or time pursuing something I think might change my life and it ends up being a total waste? Yes, I'll have gained the experience from the event. It's more the journey than the destination. I'll have a story. I'll have that life event. A great thing I did years ago. That risk. Is my life better for it? Am I happier? My answer to anyone else would be, you'll never know until you do it. But it's easier said than done. I just thought of this analogy. I used to cycle a lot, long distance, and country roads. There were times when my narrow bike tire would get stuck in a hole in the road. The hole in the road would basically guide my path. To get out of the hole before it leads me into a ditch, while the bike is moving, you have to wrench the handlebars to one side or the other to get out of the hole. However, doing so would run the risk of toppling you over or damage the bicycle. I feel like that is an analogy for my life. I'm stuck in this hole and I don't have the courage to get out for fear of hurting my knee. And now I'm sitting here wondering if the bike is even moving. Like I'm just standing on the side of the road watching my family, my cousins, my friends riding past me, living their lives. It simplifies life. I've wrenched my bike out of plenty of literal holes, but never a metaphorical one. At least, never alone. Now my hands are hovering over the keyboard. At least, never alone. Seems like another simple answer. Get help. Find someone to help you. But isn't that in itself another hole? Another risk? So that's where I'm at. I'm your average, ordinary person, suffering the exact same problems as many other 9-to-5ers in the first world countries. No, it isn't debilitating. I'm not starving, getting over a substance misuse, or coming out of the closet. But it's my secret, my problem. It felt good to share. If you got this far, well, I don't know. I commend your ability to stay awake. If life is a bicycle, he's definitely the champion at staying in the metaphorical bike lane. Story 2. My secret is I'm alone. Quite alone. From the time I wave goodbye and leave work on a Friday night to the time I walk in on Monday morning. Office job. It's common that I don't speak to another human being. If it's a busy weekend, I'll end up in a shop, buying some drinks or at a drive-thru, getting some food. Or if I'm low on supplies, I'll be at the supermarket, or I may be buying some new toys at the pet store. I might have those conversations, but I don't think they count, do they? Holidays can be a bit worse, especially Christmas or New Year's, and to a lesser degree, Easter, as the time can go by alarmingly quickly without any real human contact. I don't think this is particularly uncommon, but the secretive part is I don't tell anyone about it, because I do have friends. In fact, I have a fair amount of friends, and I think most of them care about me. Due to moving countries a few times over the years and a variety of other minutiae, I've become disconnected from them. So I let them carry on believing that I have other friends here where I am, even though I don't at all. If the conversation ever strays towards that subject, I just steer it away. I think my family thinks I'm popular and have lots of people around me. And I think my friends assume I have made other friends here, where I am, and have family here. I don't. I just let them believe it. I think one reason I don't tell them how alone I am is that I don't want them to feel sorry for me. Or more accurately, I don't want them to feel bad. Because as lonely as this life is, it's okay. And I don't want them to spend any time worrying about it. It's kind of hard to explain. But let me put it this way. If I passed away, I'd expect a pretty good turnout at my funeral. In fact, I'm pretty sure some people would travel for 24 plus hours to get to it. But if I needed to move house tomorrow and needed a hand or needed someone to look after my pets, man, I'd be alone. It's been this way for about 5 years now. I know this feeling exactly. I can go about 5 or 6 days and suddenly realize, good God, I haven't spoken to anyone in 5 days. It's kind of a horrifying feeling. But on a lighter note, if you're enjoying the video, don't forget to hit that subscribe and like button for more videos like this. Story 3. A year ago, I got in an argument with my girlfriend. She was going to end the relationship. My father passed away 2 years ago. My sister passed away 1 year afterwards. Anyway, I got in a discussion with her, then the silence. I knew it was over. Out of nowhere, I said, "Bye, I'll walk from here." He got out of the car. She was driving. I felt like my life was in pieces. My mom unemployed and depressed, and I hated my brother. I was going to graduate, but could not afford college. There's no financial aid in Colombia. And I was walking home and made up my mind. I was going to end myself. I'd been struggling with myself and no one ever noticed, so I never got therapy. I kept walking and crying in misery. When suddenly, I swear to God this is true, it started to rain. So I thought, thank you, God, for making this easier. It was actually more depressing, and then I kept walking to my house. But it was a long way, and it continued to rain harder and harder until I had to cover my eyes to have them open. I kept walking in the huge puddles of the broken streets of Bogota. I was obviously soaked in water, beyond wet. Even my cell phone fried, and I was cold. I realized the feeling of millions of gallons of cold water hitting my head had calmed me. I felt peace. I no longer wanted to end it all. Interestingly, when I got 2 blocks from home, it wasn't raining at all. There were a couple of puddles, but that's all. No water from the sky. I was the only one that went around, and people looked at me. This is the first time I've shared this. Well, I think many people may call this God, but I honestly call it luck, which in my opinion is much more impressive. I don't know. I just feel that such a huge coincidence is so rare I might as well just take advantage of it. I love water ever since. Story 4. I wish I could harm my ex-husband that harmed me for 3.5 years. I've been married to a wonderful man now for almost 7 years, but because of lingering anger issues that get better with time, I want to lash out at my ex because it wasn't like this before him. I want him to fear my every movement and make the way he made me fear him. But at the same time, I'm proud to be able to say that throughout that life, I only defended myself at times and didn't stoop to his level. I've put my hand through many walls and put holes in doors, but I know that I didn't, and for that, I'll always be the bigger woman. An example of his nobility. I had surgery on my ankle, and not even a week later, he put me to the ground for yelling at him from another room. Another time, we had one of our typical arguments, and he started reading a book my mother had bought him, hardcover and around 1,000 pages. He scowled at me. I scowled back, and he proceeded to harm me with that. Tattoos now cover the scars. The list goes on. Then I changed, and now I would harm him before letting him touch me again. Story 5. 30-year-old male here. I like wearing women's clothes. I have a whole drawer of them and various other stuff. I have a hidden Amazon wish list of various clothes I want to buy. I found out my size by wearing my ex-girlfriend's clothes. I rarely brush my teeth. When I was around 20, I just stopped brushing my teeth daily, and I don't know why. My teeth are so bad at this point that it's most likely better for me to probably have them all pulled and get dentures. Every couple months, my teeth hurt so bad I'm always scared of having to go to the hospital because of septic shock. When I talk, I try to move my lips as little as possible so I don't have to see the disgusted look on new people's faces when they notice my teeth. I didn't lose my V card until I was 24. It's my first girlfriend. It was never a big deal to me. I went out with her to give it a try and see how it was. We dated for 3 years. At the beginning of our relationship, I figured that the main reason she was dating me was because she wanted a baby. I told her I didn't want one, so as to not crush her hopes, I would always tag on, maybe one day I'll change my mind. She hung on to those words for the remainder of our relationship, thinking one day I might change. Eventually, I got tired of the topic being brought up, so when she asked if I wanted to break up, I said yes, figuring she was wanting out of the relationship too and was giving me the opportunity to make the decision for her. We dated for 3 years. Within 6 months, she was pregnant with her new boyfriend. She was expecting her second child now also. I realize now I never really had any feelings for her and was most likely using her as a roommate I could be with. I don't feel sorry in the slightest bit about feeling this way. I'm sure I should go to a psychiatrist and get diagnosed with one of the things that I'm pretty sure I have had for years. ADHD, bipolar, depression, or maybe even DID. I tell other people that it's because I can't afford the medicine, which is somewhat true, but honestly, I sometimes think I like the mental state I am in at times. Other times I hate the way I feel when I'm sad or when I simply can't focus on something. And still yet, other times I sit and wonder if I'm just making these symptoms up just so I can have something to point at and say, that's what's wrong with me. Over the last few years, I've greatly questioned my own mental status, but if I get diagnosed, then that means I have a way to fix myself. And I'm afraid that I will miss out on the things I enjoy about me. I run through this circle of through processes very frequently. Story 6. This will never be seen, but I'll post it in case I need to get it off my chest. It's a huge mess of a life I live. My secret is I have bought 2 rings, engagement, in the last 4 years, for 2 different girls I've dated. One was a really long-term relationship, and the other was the one after whom I also had a long-term with. I feel stuck because I can't seem to understand why it is when I feel that I meet someone that I would like to spend the rest of my life with. They always up and leave without warning or reason. I've become so jaded to the point now where I hate myself. I blame the fact that I want something more beyond dating or relationships, that the world just hates me. I've given up and decided that I will probably just always be the single friend. I'm always a buck short and a day late in these things, so if a shoe fits, wear it, right? I have many friends, most of whom are all married now. They think I'm some living legend of bachelorhood. I bring home women on a constant basis for one purpose, to help get over or distract me temporarily from my feelings. On top of the randoms, I'm currently sleeping with 3 women on a regular basis out of sheer convenience. My friends think I'm a god for being youngish and messing around, none of which will know of the pain I feel inside as the reason it drives me to do these things. Out of depression, I'm currently sleeping with ex number 1. I'm sure it's mutual on both our parts from our last relationships, and it just feels familiar for the both of us. I've been hanging with her lately since I don't have anyone else around. I'm sleeping with my best friend who has a thing for me since I met her in school. We cannot be dating because of some issues between us, like her and my scheduling. I recently acquired an old friend who I met in school, years ago through some friends. I rotate around the 3 of them through a weirdly planned out schedule. I think it works because I never have to invest any feelings other than just use or be used as a piece of trash. I've been working on girl number 4, but it's been proving more of a challenge. I also like ex number 2, more than number 1, but number 1 had a better body. Number 2 ran off a couple of months ago and I would imagine is living a nice life somewhere, possibly with a recently divorced coworker, while being friends with another girl I dated briefly, who both, by the way, hate me for some mess-ups I did while dating them. I accept my responsibility for that. I have contemplated ending it all, but I have a feeling that I will probably pass away by the hand of a former lover who I probably burned. Never know what a scorned woman will do, so I wait. Story 7. The summer before I last met the most amazing girl through the girlfriend of a friend, we became very close and were definitely into each other, but we were both too shy to admit it. Summer ends and we both go off to our respective colleges. Over that first semester, we stayed in constant contact, texting for hours on end. I thought for certain that she was the one for me. There were a few incidents of her getting hammered at parties and with other guys, but she would always talk to me after like she really regretted it. It wasn't like we were officially in a relationship at that point, so I didn't feel I could hold it against her. Winter break came and my parents were away for the entire week after Christmas. I took the opportunity to hold a huge holiday or New Year's party. And obviously, this girl was invited. She ended up spending the entire week in my house, at which point it was clear we were together. Second semester came, and our interaction slowly deteriorated. I figured, naively if I look at it now, that she was just busy with school. The reality came when I logged onto Facebook and saw that we were no longer in a relationship. On top of that, she was now listed as in a relationship with somebody else. I haven't spoken directly with her since then. Even when we're with mutual friends, I've yet to speak a single word directed specifically to her. At this point, part of me wants to have a normal relationship like everyone else, but at the same time, another part of me is just saying that I will never end up with anything but manipulative liars.
What is a secret that you will never tell anyone? As a teen, I stayed the night at my best friend's house and slept in their guest room. I was woken about 2 a.m. to the sound of her older brother arriving home intoxicated from a party. He saw me in the guest room and leaned against the doorway to say hi. He then stumbled down the hallway to his bedroom but never turned the halfway light off, and it made it difficult for me to get back to sleep. So after about 10 to 15 minutes, I got up and walked down the end of the hallway to the light switch. I turned it off and started walking back to my room, and I briefly glanced into his bedroom as I walked past. His door was wide open and he was sitting at his computer with his back facing me. He was watching what looked like a guy converted to a woman. Can't be certain, but it looked like someone in heavy makeup, long hair. He must have made a noise because he swung around, saw me staring and said, "Oh crap." Then I immediately and swiftly returned to bed and lay in the dark, not able to get the image out of my head. 5 minutes later, I heard him creeping down the hallway. I was like, oh God, here we go. He looked so sheepish and uncomfortable. He stood in the doorway and apologized for what I'd seen and begged me not to tell my friend, his little sister. I swore I'd never tell them and told him it's fine and to go back to bed. To this day, they wonder why he hasn't got a girlfriend and they think perhaps he has a crush on me because he acts weird around me. Well, that's one way to make a lasting impression. Story 2. I ended up telling the story to my mother 15 years later, but it kind of counts. This happened when I was 6. When I was a little kid, my paternal grandmother had 2 dogs. Tessa, a little ditzy Maltese, and Bindy, a Rhodesian Ridgeback. Tessa was too stupid to even realize being mean was an option, so we always played with her when we visited my grandmother. But Bindy was always locked away in half of the house. When asked about her, my mother would bristle and say, "Bindy doesn't like kids." My mother had her reasons to be very fearful of dogs like Bindy. She had to put down her first dogs when I was born because they were seriously aggressive towards me, like launching themselves at the window if they saw me aggressively. The house operated under an airlock system for the first year and a half of my life, always 2 doors between me and the dogs. After a while, my grandmother moved into the house directly behind ours and we put a gate between our shared fence. Suddenly, Bindy was accessible. We kept a respectful and fearful distance from her, for the most part. One day I was in my garden playing with my very patient Labrador KD. We were playing circus. This dog was amazing. There wasn't a single thing you could do to him to make him mad, except be a horse. He hated horses. Bindy wandered into the yard and was watching us, so, in a burst of foolishness, I ran towards her to try and involve her in the game. She panicked and bit me. Not hard. I didn't get any wounds or anything. I had some indents on my arm from her teeth and it did bruise a little, but even now I'm always covered in bruises. I panicked and cried and sulked in my cubby house until I calmed down enough to go inside. I knew I couldn't tell my mother because I would get in so much trouble for playing with Bindy. The next day I was in the garden with KD and Bindy was there also, but I ignored her. I studiously ignored her for weeks. She'd come up and I'd walk away. Then some switch flicked. She's my adoring dog now. Everywhere I went, she followed after me and doted after me. We'd curl up on the sofa together and I couldn't go a single step without her at my side. I think she must have felt so guilty about that bite. She was my sweet dog and we were best friends for 4 more years until she passed. My parents always remarked on this miraculous change in attitude from Bindy. How an old, ornery dog who hated everyone was suddenly an oversized lapdog. Even years after she passed, they'd marvel about it. I didn't tell my mother until I was well into my 20s that the reason Bindy liked me was because she bit me. Story 3. Around 10 years ago, when I was a teenager, my dad, who worked in the video game industry back then, got a gaming laptop, worth around $3,000 at the time, as a gift he didn't have a real use for. So he gave it to me, as I used to play World of Warcraft back then. He was very adamant about telling me to not put liquids, i.e. drinks, etc., on my desk next to it, as I'm very clumsy. So one night I made myself a huge bowl of cornflakes and put the bowl next to the laptop because I forgot my spoon in the kitchen. I sometimes put a blanket over myself when I was gaming, and when I got up from the chair that night, I somehow managed to flip the bowl over with my blanket, and the milk flooded the open laptop. I got incredibly scared, turned the laptop off and cleaned it like my life depended on it, and went to bed. I obviously broke the laptop as I didn't get it to turn on anymore. But I was too scared to tell my dad what happened, especially since he repeatedly told me to be careful. I told him how I didn't have any idea what happened and how it worked perfectly fine the night before. I still feel incredibly bad about it. Update, I told my dad. And although I can't believe it, he honestly didn't know. He wasn't angry at all and laughed it off. On a different note, I'm really happy I've told the story here as it ended up with me telling him and apologizing for my mistake. Feels really good. Story 4. I saw my friend steal 2 cans of soup when we were teenagers. I worked at a grocery store at the time and thought I saw her walk in. I was on my break, so I went looking through the aisles to say hello. Saw her with her back turned to me in one of the aisles. She had a big satchel-type bag. I watched her toss 2 cans of soup in quickly and then look around to make sure no one saw. She didn't look all the way behind her. She would have seen me if she had. She started walking away and I cheerily called her name like I was just noticing I saw her. She looked so scared and broken. I'm sure she was extremely nervous about getting caught, so she just said hello and quickly claimed she had to run to her mom's car because she forgot something. She didn't come back in. This was a 16-year-old girl with 3 younger sisters and a single mom. The whole time I knew her, she seemed like the parent to those girls, not her mother. If she was desperate and had to take 2 cans of Campbell's so that they'd have something, anything, to eat that night, then who was I to embarrass her or say anything to anyone? Story 5. 2 days in a row when I was in the 2nd grade, I whizzed my pants. Because the teacher had this policy where she wouldn't let any student go to the bathroom even during free times in class. The 3rd time, I spent a solid 10 minutes begging her before she finally said fine. I whizzed my pants on the way to the bathroom. My family only knows of the one time, but I had to deal with that humiliation 2 times before, and it was within the 1st week at school. After that, I had a water bottle that I whizzed in during her class for the remainder of the year. I don't know what she was expecting if somebody who just moved in with 0 friends would be doing in the bathroom. But honestly, if I would have the opportunity to go back in time, I would rather tell myself to whiz on her desk because that would have been less humiliating than whizzing my pants 3 days in a row. Story 6. About a week before I graduated high school, my family had a massive house fire. We lived out in the country and no one was home, so by the time anyone noticed it was on fire, it was way too far gone. 30-foot flames above the roof. We lost everything, but had insurance and no one got hurt. Anyways, I was in a chemistry class at the time that around 70% of the grade centered around a lab notebook that was graded all at once at the end of the semester. You would do labs every week and then do lab write-ups in the notebook. I had been slacking off and was way behind the assignment and would have to pull a few all-nighters just to turn something in. The day after the fire, I went into class and told my teacher that the notebook had gone up in the fire, and that I had no idea how I would ever turn the assignment in. He was extremely nice about it, told me not to worry and gave me 100% of the whole assignment. Just said that I had bigger things to worry about and was about to graduate, and that he hoped my family was doing okay. Well, the notebook was in my car the whole time. Threw that thing away and swore myself to secrecy. Gotta do what you gotta do. Story 7. I was in high school. I had problems talking to people. I was a shy kid. I found out my cousin went to the same school and I saw that he was in the same boat. He was a lot more social and a lot more funny, but he just didn't click with people. Just me. We became best friends. Had a blast at lunch every day. One day, a girl invited me to go eat sushi, and I was stoked. I had plans with my cousin. Tradition, you may say, and just bailed on him. I was like, yo, this really cute girl asked me to eat sushi with her. And although he was upset, he was like, cool, have fun. Well, when it was time to go eat, I went with a girl and some people told her they were going to go eat at X place, but they only had room for one more in their car. The girl, without hesitating, said yes and just got in and left me. I was scared to walk through the hallways. scared to run into my cousin. I didn't have the gut to tell him what just happened. I passed by the library and saw him there, sitting alone, passing time. Broke my heart that I left him. Never again. Bros before everything. Story 8. I worked as a medical assistant in the early 90s. Right out of school, at my first job, the doctor was a screamer who would yell at us in front of patients, call us names, make us work during our breaks, etc. But the worst thing he did was make us work overtime at the regular hourly rate. $6 an hour then. So one day I told the office manager, who was also the doctor's wife, that someone had called from the state wage board and said they were investigating a complaint from a former worker about non-payment of overtime. The mandatory overtime stopped, and if we did have any, it was paid at the time and a half rate. Bonus, I got to hear the doctor and wife complain about it and wonder which ex-employee did it. There was a lot of turnover, so that was fun. Story 9. I used to work in a shopping center. One time, as I was walking into the building, I sneezed and totally soiled myself. I was about 10 steps away from the shop, so I had to think fast. I took a hard left turn and walked directly into a department store. I only had $5 on me, so I beelined for the underpants section and got the cheapest pair I could find. I then had to go to the center toilets and sort everything out. It was a real mess. I texted my boss and told him I was stuck in traffic, but in reality, I was 100 meters away trying to salvage any shred of dignity I could for the next 20 minutes. I'm happy to say the mission was a success. That day is now the benchmark by which all the other days are measured. Every day since has been infinitely better. Story 10. During my freshman year in high school, I was drinking a red Gatorade at lunch. This girl said that I was sitting in her seat. I hurried and swiped my drink to find another seat. I didn't realize my Gatorade lid wasn't tightened and the drink basically splashed all over her white pants. I scurried off, pretending I basically just didn't mess up this girl's pants with red Gatorade. A few weeks later, my friend invited me over to play some League at his house. His sister came home and I realized that was the girl I spilled my drink on. On God, I was crapping my pants at that very moment. But luckily, she seemed to have not remembered my face because she did not mention it. My friend and I still talk to this day. I've graduated high school 9 years ago, and I have never told this to him or his sister. Sometimes feel like she pretends not to remember and is actually plotting something all these years. Story 11. This is a crazy one. It's a secret to the other two people, but we don't talk about it much. We were eating at a new wing restaurant that just opened, and we were excited to eat there. We ordered our food, and we're having a good time. About 10 minutes after we had a few drinks, this guy across the restaurant throws a glass at a waitress's feet, but misses, and starts shouting. And all we watch, and he runs into the bathroom with his girlfriend. So at the table, we all agreed if he comes out and starts trouble, we would have to step in, being the only young or strong people capable of dealing with him, as most of the people in the restaurant were old or female. So we wait. He comes out and appears to be leaving peacefully as the manager had already called the police. As he's walking out, an older man says to him, "You need some respect." With that, he heard a 60-plus man. In a blink of an eye, I got up and football tackled this guy into the stools at the bar, knocking over like 6 stools and 2 tables. I get him restrained and start to bring him out of the restaurant for the police, but in doing so, his girlfriend starts hurting me. I go to block and he gets loose and starts swinging. I lift him up by the neck with both hands against the window while he's still hitting me. I got fed up and completely slammed this dude through this older couple's table, which was 2 small tables pushed together, so he flew right through, sending drinks, nachos, and wings everywhere, with people screaming and roughing this guy. This is when I heard his girlfriend scream, "He's only got 1 arm. Let him go. For Christ's sake, let him go." I just roughened up a crippled man. In the whole situation, he had a leather coat on and it looked like he had 2 arms. I immediately let him go and got up, and then, with his 1 arm, he picked up a chair above his head and my friend cranked him, setting him down. The couple quickly ran out. Cop showed up and took our info, and I was let go because I was defending myself and others and tried to get him out. The cop asked me, "Do you want to press charges?" And I said, "What would I get? His other arm?" We all laughed and the night went on, but at a different restaurant because this restaurant was literally trashed. My friends and I don't talk about it because we roughened up a 1-armed man, even if he deserved it. People tend not to like people who roughen up handicapped people. Story 12. I was walking my dog on a dirt road next to my subdivision. This dirt road ran parallel to several backyards and had lots of trees on either side for concealment. For me, it was an unofficial nature trail because it allowed me to get away from people. One morning, I spotted two of my neighbors, who were married to other people, making out and obviously about to do the deed. Since they were so into each other, they didn't hear me coming up until my dog started making noise. For several seconds, we all looked at each other, saying nothing until the couple took off running in the direction of their respective backyards. We all knew each other, but I wasn't friends with the two nor their spouses. Long story short, I kept my mouth shut about what I saw, and neither of the lovebirds ever said anything to me. I have no idea if this had been a one-time thing or a long-term affair. Story 13. When I was 14 or 15, I would listen to music and just imagine I have a character in one of the shows I would watch, like Teen Titans, Totally Spies, or, God forgive me, Hamtaro. The day I tried to listen to music and imagine this stupid crossover between them and jump around my room, my brother had actually heard me jumping around from previous days and hid in my closet. He observed all the stupid stuff I did and a mixture of shows combined because I would whisper clips from the characters. Instantly reacted by trying to hurt him as soon as he revealed himself, but he just laughed the entire time. Only he and I ever knew, and I've been embarrassed by it ever since it happened. Developed paranoia of being watched, but I'm actually thankful for that now. I finally got that off my chest. No longer has any power over me. Story 14. I never told the full details of it because I'm honestly too messed up from what I witnessed. And the fact of the matter is that nothing I reveal would even change what happened. I visited my mother's hometown in Mexico during the summer with her and my younger sister. This was the week after the plane crash in Durango happened, and we were heading there for a bit, so I got super anxious, and that kept me up a couple of days after we got there, along with the time difference. We stayed at our great-uncle's house, and I was sleeping on the futon on the ground, while my sister and mom shared the bed. My anxiety and difficulty adjusting to the time difference meant that I was up pretty late at night. I was just on my phone, playing some mobile games when I heard a loud noise. I live in a dangerous neighborhood back home, so I was used to hearing this kind of stuff. Then two more were fired. This time it was closer. No one else woke up, and I was just lying there thinking someone must be intoxicated. It was wedding season, and I should try to get some sleep because it could also be a hallucination. The next morning, my mom asked me if I was up last night. I told her that I was, then she asked if I heard anything. I let her know that I heard something, but I didn't think about it much. Her face went pale. Apparently the neighbor 2 houses down had ended his wife the night I was up. It was a small town, so everyone knew, and he was quickly arrested. I asked if anyone else was hurt last night, but she told me that it was just the woman who was ended. The town was close to the city, and they were strict about their weapon control. So I should be happy that I know about what caused those 2 loud noises, right? Well, I think a lot about that first now. The man only had a weapon, and he was the only one reported that night. The first one, to my knowledge, was more likely from a hand weapon. Who was that first person? Did the wife conceal her own weapon and fire in self-defense? Was it an intoxicated guy like I initially thought it was? Did someone else pass away that night but no one else knew about? I think I was the only one who heard that first one, since everyone else only talked about those 2 loud ones. I tried asking to see if they heard anything else, but they didn't. Everyone knows each other like family in this town, so surely they knew who did what. But even they didn't know that the neighbor was capable of doing this. I'm not sure I want to know who fired that first one. Story 15. I can't believe I'm going to spill this, especially on the internet, because I'm more embarrassed about the stupidity of a 13-year-old me than anything. When I was 13, a nefarious kid in the neighborhood was a shoplifter, and I had just started smoking. A new gas station just opened up. Back in the day, I'm showing my age here, they left cartons of cigarettes out in the open. Anyway, this kid would steal cartons, so I asked him to steal a card for me. He said he would, but asked me what I would trade for it. He wanted my Game Boy, but I said I'd give him something better, one of my mom's rings. So when I go to my mom's room, open a jewelry box and bust out a single diamond ring and give it to this schmuck, and he gives me a carton of cigs. To this day, I keep telling myself it was costume jewelry to make myself feel better, but I honestly don't know. I'm sorry, Mom. Worst trade deal in the history of trade deals. Maybe ever. Story 16. When I was in 6th grade, our math teacher had a contest where teams of 2 could spend a week guessing how many jelly beans were in this large container, and whatever team got the closest would win all the jelly beans. Kids would be up there trying to count individual jelly beans before class and walking around it all day, sizing it up. Somehow the teacher let it slip that the amount was written on a piece of paper under the screw in the lid of the container. So I concocted a plan. I told this kid Nate that I would split my share of jelly beans with him if he did the following. When we were walking down to lunch, he had to tell the teacher he forgot his lunchbox and run back to the classroom to get it. While he was there, he would open the container and see what the number was. Then he would fill out a form with me and my partner's name on it. I told him it couldn't be him because then the teacher would be suspicious of him being the one alone in the classroom. I also told him not to put the exact number because that's fishy too. It has to be off by just a few. Needless to say, I won the jelly beans at the end of the week. When it came to pay up with Nate, I gave him one handful of jelly beans and that was it. He got really upset and said that wasn't fair. I basically told him, what are you going to do about it? And ate 300 jelly beans over the course of the next 3 days. I promise, I'm not as much of a schmuck as I sound like in 6th grade. Just really like sugar. I've only ever told my wife this story, and I feel like she doesn't trust me anymore after hearing it. If you're enjoying the video, don't forget to hit that subscribe and like button for more videos like this. Story 17. In the 8th grade in woodshop class, we were working on the table saw. Part of the table saw had this long, hollow tube that was coated with sawdust in the inside. I told this kid Max to look in the tube on the other side. He did, and not thinking at all about the outcome, I blew into it and his eyes were coated with sawdust. He had to use the emergency eye washout system or fountain thing. So this was at the end of 8th grade, and I was going to high school next year. The punishment was to come to class during the summer and to do work for the teacher. Well, right when school ended, I was to go to my grandma's cabin at the ocean for a week. Knowing I was done with that school, I never showed. Nothing ever happened about it. I felt horrible and just didn't think about the consequences in that split second. Story 18. When I was younger, I had 2 geckos. I begged for them for so long and finally got them for Christmas. My house was so cold in the winter and I knew they needed to be warm. I opened up the doors to their cage and pointed my heater at it. I didn't plan to leave it like that for too long, but I fell asleep. I woke up in the morning to one gecko missing and the other one fried up from all of the heat. I cried so hard I can't believe I ended such a tiny, harmless creature in such an awful way. Since the cage was open, the other one managed to escape, so I found him under my bed. My parents knew how upset I was, so they bought me a baby gecko not long after. I guess you shouldn't keep big and baby geckos together because the big one ate the small one. I gave him away. I was so traumatized. I think about that often. My poor Lizzie got cooked, and Rex ate baby Peach. Story 19. During Christmas last year, my mother got completely hammered. She had already prepared a lot of food, but there was still good being made. My mom and I only have each other, so it was just me and her. She had made a big thing of pork and asked if I'd like to try it. I said yes. She was so hammered she couldn't even cut a piece off. I was just 17 at the time and had little experience with drinks, so I didn't know how badly she was intoxicated. Maybe 20 minutes later, she was trying to take the pork out of the oven and dropped it all on the floor. All the oil spilled out to coat the kitchen floor as well. So as she tried to clumsily recover the pork, she slipped and hit her head. She wasn't knocked unconscious, but she was dazed and confused. I had to clean up the food off the ground, clean the oil off my mother, and carry her to bed. I then spent the rest of the night cleaning the kitchen and driving around my town looking for a place to eat in Christmas. I didn't find anything. To this day, the only person who knows is my girlfriend. Story 20. When I was really young, maybe 5 to 6, I got told off for saying a stupid word. My mother told me if I say it again, she'd wash my mouth out with soap. Inevitably, because I was a kid and dumb, I said it again. Lo and behold, along came the soap. I was dragged into the kitchen, made to sit on the counter, and had to sit there with it in my mouth for God knows how long. Tasted like crap. My dad found out and had a huge argument broke out, which culminated in my dad taking me out of the house and driving around all day. I remember feeling like everything was falling apart. Like the way my life was, it would never be the same. Something was robbed, but as a kid, I had no actual concept of what that was. When we got back later on in the evening, bags were packed and things were in uproar. My mother had smashed a huge glass-encased radio or vinyl player, the kind from the 80s. My memory fades to black after that. I remember, even as a kid, knowing this was wrong and I'd be living with this memory for the rest of my life. This is fundamentally the genesis of why I have attachment, abandonment, and anxiety issues and find it incredibly hard to trust anyone. As soon as I sense something off with someone, my guard goes up and my emotions shut down. It is why I do everything by myself independently and hate asking for help because literally everybody I've known has let me down at some point. It is probably why I'll never really have a happy relationship because whoever I end up with will have to understand this and accept it. Something that I can't really see anyone wanting to take on. Story 21. There was this girl I was friends with some years ago. I really liked her to the point of loving, but I never got the chance to say it, until I got it and cast it into the fire. We were great friends, and I loved her to such a degree that I could be anything she needed. I was her humble servant, advisor, guy that drives everybody home because he's the only one that's sober, and confidant. I knew everything about her. Every dream, every problem, every wish. I wiped out her tears. I made her laugh. I would protect her when we got into fights, and I would be always ready when she needed me, no matter the time or the place. In her presence, I was the best I could be. A powerful knight, unshakable and always ready to help, always smiling and bringing joy. The thing is that, even though I knew all about her, she knew almost nothing past my act. My mind is a living nightmare because of my upbringing. According to my doctor, I have a hero complex, anxiety problems, and very low self-respect or love. Not counting my panic attacks once in a while, I almost couldn't sleep at night. I felt like a zombie all the time, and in my worst days, felt I could pass away at any moment. Yet there I stood, always at her side. One day we were laying on the ground drinking, and she told me that she loved me. It was the best sensation I ever felt. To this day, at least, I could barely restrain my happiness, but I felt I couldn't accept that love. I've been dealing with problems with family, money, my own mind, expectations, my future, what the hell I was going to do with my life. I just couldn't be a burden and share it with her, allow her to see past my armor. So I let her down slowly and felt like absolute crap. I still think about it and ponder if it was the best decision. It probably sounds stupid, but I needed to vent it somewhere eventually. So it may be buried here as my little secret. Now our secret. Story 22. 1969 or so. I was 11 and my bedtime was 9 p.m. The phone rang about 9:30 and it picked up the extension nearest my bedroom. My mother's best friend Charlotte was in hysterics. Her ex-husband had a weapon and I could hear him threaten her. I listened in horror and I realized my mom was going to go over to her house. Police would not respond to these kinds of disputes. I threw on some shorts and got down on the floor of the back seat of Mom's car. I kept quiet as Mom drove across town into a very bad dispute. My mother was always my hero, and that night, she was so brave. My mother got out of the car and Miss Charlotte was in only garments. My mother talked to him for over half an hour when she finally got him to give her the weapon. She put Charlotte in the front seat next to her and drove to the local police station. As she drove, we heard Charlotte and called 5 times and was told no one would come. My mother got out at the police station. I sat on the floorboard and waited. Our police chief walked them both out to the car. I freaked out and tried my best to crawl under the seat. I hear my mother address the chief by his first name. Mike, I'm going to see that you never get elected for dog catcher again if you don't go and throw him into jail now. Years passed and we never spoke of that night. My mom passed away 6 years later and I still think to her for displays of courage. Story 23. In high school, there was this girl that I tried to be friends with. I always tried to be super nice. I would buy her lunch, lend her clothes, I even sent pizza for her whole family for dinner one time. There was this dance at school, and she had never been to a dance, so I said I would take her as a friend. I went all out for her. I bought her a dress, and when she didn't like it, I let her wear my dress and favorite shoes, and I wore the dress that was for her. I took her out to dinner and dessert and got her a corsage, and the second we got to the dance, she disappeared and wouldn't answer my texts. I ended up leaving the dance early because I didn't have anyone else to hang out with, but she stayed. The next time I saw her, I asked her if she could bring me back my dress and shoes, and she said she would, but then didn't come to school for weeks. When she finally came back, she said the dress was ripped and she broke one of the heels of my shoes. I was super sad, but I said it was fine and moved on. 2 days later, she stole $80 from my bag that was for a club fundraiser, so not even my money. And the school wouldn't do anything about it. Anyways, I decided to get back at her and try to get some of the money back, so I convinced her boyfriend to give me some free substance. He was always flirting with me. I put it in her bag during gym and I went to campus security and reported her for the reward money. I figured she'd just go to boot camp for a week like everyone else. No big deal. Turns out she was lying about her age and she was actually 21 and already on thin ice with the school, so she went to prison instead. Part of me feels bad because I didn't intend to ruin her entire life, but she did steal from me when I was already giving her pretty much anything she asked me for. Story 24. I'm a non-straight man. While on the internet, I met this older man and we clicked, played games together, talked a lot, FaceTime, etc. I figured we were good friends. Until one day he mentioned the only reason he started talking to me was because I seemed not straight. He was correct. So after a few dates, we ended up hooking up a few times. Then literally weeks later, my parents invited me to an event to meet my distant family members. I didn't really want to go, but my cousin convinced me it would be fun. I went there and knew practically no one. My grandfather had 11 sisters and 2 brothers, so there were many unfamiliar faces, except for one. It was my internet friend. We pretended to be meeting for the first time. Obviously, we kept quiet about it while trying to figure out how we were related. He's essentially my grandfather's sister's first son. Not only that, but he's married with 3 kids. He told me he was single. After that awkward encounter, we distanced ourselves from each other. Although occasionally we do still play games together on Steam, I had intimacy with my first cousin once removed, and a married man. It's my little secret, mainly because I doubt anyone wants to hear it. Story 25. I want to preface this by saying this isn't a throwaway, as I don't want to hide on the internet. This isn't me anymore. I'm way better. I worked for my dream company from 2015 to 2017, and I was in my mid-20s. It was only my dream company because my dad was employed there for 20 years prior, and I thought I saw that they treated him well. Plus, they paid pretty well. During those 2 years, I was extremely happy. I did my job, got great reviews, got paid really well. Mid-$40,000 a year. Compared to my job before, $28,000 a year. My clients loved me. I thought life was great. Just after my second anniversary at the company, they restructured the department and laid off the last 10 people hired. I was number 10. My clients complained, my managers complained, everyone complained, but nothing they could do with a new director. I had some clients reach out trying to bring me on, but I couldn't afford to move to another city on the pay they were offering, and remote work wasn't trusted that much for newcomers. I was distraught, but I picked myself up. I've never been a depressed person. I try to be on the bright side of everything, and I think I have some of the grit that my tough-as-nails military or agricultural ancestors passed on. I did everything I could, but it's really hard when you've been out of work for 3 months in a town with limited possibilities, have $1,700 a month in student loan debt, and are living with your parents with no financial or social future. I like owning weapons for protection and hunting. Always have. I have several that, at the time, I didn't really keep locked up. Just out of reach of children and out of eyesight, but I know right where they are for self-defense if I ever needed it. So one night I was mulling over my lack of opportunities and kept thinking about how I could just get rid of all these thoughts. I grabbed one of my weapons, checked the chamber, and that's when the clarity hit me. Don't do anything else. Just put it down. I put the weapon away and I cried myself to sleep that night, which is hard for a 27-year-old, 6'7", 300-pound guy to admit to doing because of depression. The next morning, I collected all my weapons and other hunting equipment that I kept in my room and took it to my dad's upstairs. I just asked if he could lock it all up and I'd ask for it back sometime. I didn't ask any questions, just agreed. I think he knew. No, I know he knew what was going on, but he's never let on. About a week later, I connected with a woman who I would later marry. She got me to go to church again after about 12 years being away where I found more strength and purpose. About 4 months after I finally found a temp job, which followed up with another temp job, which then resulted in a full-time gig in my current career field for the past 3 years. I asked for my weapons and all back about a year ago, which was just before I got married and moved out, as I knew he would need that permission. My dad still never asked why or said if he knew why. Outside of possibly my dad, I don't think anyone truly knows that I was contemplating ending it all that night. It scares me to think that I could get that low, but I think it's important for me to remember it and to know that I can always count on myself to persevere and pull myself out of any hole, given patience and strength. I still don't want to openly admit it to my loved ones, as I don't want them to worry, considering I'm in a good place now. Story 26. When I was about 10, my parents were not happy together. They were both miserable. No one is at fault, really. They just should have gotten divorced long before I was born. Because they were both miserable, I took it upon myself to be the clown and make everyone laugh. One day my mom was boiling eggs and she asked me to shock them, put them in freezing cold water to stop them cooking and make them peel easier. I knew what she meant, but instead I lifted the lid off the pan and yelled, "Boo!" really hard. My mom, who believed that I thought that's how you do it, laughed so hard she cried. Mission success. This is now her favorite story she tells everyone. Every Christmas, every time we see or eat eggs, when I bring a new girlfriend, if I would ever get married or buried before her, she will tell this story. For her, the hilarious part is in the fact that she thinks I was being serious. I wasn't, but she'll never know. She's, and my dad too, in a much better place now. But I'll let her have this story. It brings her so much joy. Story 27. From 4th grade until I was a senior in high school, one of my best friends was a compulsive liar. I loved this kid like a brother. We would do anything and everything together. It would make me forget about my problems when we would hang out. A real nice kid. Then he started to lie, and I remember the first lie he told me. He told me he made up a song. Sang the song, and I instantly knew what song it was. I didn't say anything because I thought he was joking. Fast forward to high school. He would lie to me about his parents, his work, who we hung out with, what he was doing when I asked him so we could hang out. I honestly thought he just didn't like me. After high school, went running at one point, and he stopped in his car. We both said hi, and we hung out on the side of the road and talked after a couple of years of not talking. He told me he missed me and wanted to hang out. I followed through and hit him up a couple days later and got no reply. He started to spiral out of control and start talking back to his parents and got kicked out. In 2013, he moved in with his other friend and parents for a while, then they kicked him out. Then he lived out of his car. He asked me if he could stay over for a couple of nights, and I said no. I said no, knowing he could have stayed over. But the amount of lies I caught him made me feel like he wasn't my best friend anymore. Made me feel like he wasn't my friend at all. After that night, I haven't spoken to him. Story 28. I lived in a rural area, and one day, my nearest neighbor, who lived a couple 100 yards away, accused me of ending her cat. I denied this, but she was quite irate and insisted that I must have one, because I don't like cats and her cat vanished after years of being a loyal cat. I was quite mystified by this whole thing, and sad at the loss of a well-liked neighbor, but there was nothing I could do. Several years later, I was cleaning out an old barn on my property, and under the floorboards, I found a cat collar with the Auburn Tigers logo on it. The neighbor was a huge Auburn fan. Long story short, there was a fox den under the barn, and her cat was apparently snatched by a fox. I decided not to tell her or return the collar. It seemed best for her to just hate her neighbor. Why come over with her long-lost loved pet's collar and dredge the memory up again? So she dislikes me. I know what happened to her cat. Story 29. I anonymously called CPS and APS after I found a coworker pestering an adult at the adult foster care or group home I worked for. She was always spiked during shifts, but no one took that seriously. Eventually, I got tired of complaining to the higher-ups and went straight to the right office. I made many calls to many different places. Some wanted to care for these people. No one believed me until one of our residents was mistreated. Then all hell broke loose, and whoever anonymously complained should show their face since they're so right. I never went forward or admitted it was me who called, but I'm glad everyone, including the managers, were investigated and fired. I hated it there. I hated every moment there, but I didn't want to leave my residence with those people until I knew they were safe. I worked over 100 hours per week just to ensure they weren't being mistreated on my watch. I still feel like I didn't do enough some days, and the guilt is enough to make me lose appetite for weeks on end. I never understood why people worked at group homes for those with developmental disabilities or mentally ill. No one held a weapon to them and made them work. It's not hard being a decent human being, especially to those who don't have the mental capacity to understand life. Well, if you like these stories, here's more. YouTube thinks you're going to love this. Catch you in that video.